Kabbalist Genesis. In the beginning before beginning, when there was yet no beginning to begin with, there was only the infinite, the concealed light without end, known to the wise as Ein Sof. Neither above nor below, neither male nor female, neither thought nor silence, a presence uncontained, whose essence no word can seize. From this infinite arose a wool, not a wool as mortals know, but the most subtle stirring within infinity itself, the desire to bestow being. The Zohar calls this the hidden spark of Keter ayin, the supernal crown, which is both the first and the last, the source and the return of all things. When the infinite willed to manifest, he withdrew himself from himself, not in space, for there was none, but in awareness, creating a hollow of possibility, a womb within the infinite light. This is the Tzimtzum, the contraction of God's own presence, the secret of the divine humility that makes creation possible. Within that space of potentiality, the infinite drew forth a single ray of brilliance, a thin line of radiance called the Kav, the first emanation of divine energy entering the void. That light became the thread upon which the worlds would be strung. From the first impulsive wool, Keter, emanated the flash of intuition, Chakma, and from Chakma unfolded the deep understanding of Bina. Father and mother, Abba and Ima, joined in creative union, and from their embrace flowed the river of mercy that watered the field of emanation. The Zohar calls this moment Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning, Elohim created, yet it explains that Bereshit means in wisdom, for it is through Chakma that the world came to be. The word Elohim, associated with Bina, the womb of divine form, receives and shapes that light into the order of existence. Thus, each word of the opening verse conceals an entire cosmology. In the beginning signifies the first concentration of divine thought. Created denotes the descent of light into limitation, and Elohim implies the balance between mercy and judgment through which the infinite takes on measure. The first light spoken, Yihi or, let there be light, is not the light of the sun, but the Or Haganaz, the hidden supernal radiance that illumines the righteous and sustains the inner world of all creation. This primordial light is cheesed, loving kindness made visible, but it requires the boundaries of Jevira, divine restraint, to have any form. The 6 days of creation are not days in time, but emanations of divine qualities. The first day corresponds to cheesed, the outpouring of love, the second to Jevira, the power of differentiation, the third to Tiferet, the harmony between them, the fourth to Netzach, victory and persistence, the fifth to Had, splendor and resonance, and the sixth to Yesod, the foundation through which divine energy flows into the material world. On the seventh day, all these forces are gathered and unified in Malkut, the Shekinah, the feminine indwelling presence of God who receives the supernal lights and reflects them into the finite world. The Sabbath is therefore not mere rest, but reunion, the sacred coupling, zivig, of the divine masculine and feminine that sustains all being. In this way, the cosmos itself is a tree of emanations, the Etz Hayayim, with roots in the infinite and branches descending into the visible. Each level mirrors the one above it, and the human soul mirrors them all. For the human being was formed in the image of Adam Kadmon, the primordial man, whose body is the architecture of the sefirot. To say that God created man in his image is to declare that humanity carries within it the structure of divinity, the 10 attributes of wisdom, understanding, mercy, strength, beauty, victory, glory, foundation, and sovereignty, and that through conscious awareness. One repairs cosmic vessels and restores the harmony of the worlds. The creation narrative is thus not a tale of past events, but the continuous process of emanation, concealment, and repair. Each moment, light flows from the infinite through the channels of the sefirot, filling the vessels of existence. Each moment, those vessels tremble beneath the radiance they contain. The world endures because the Shekinah receives that light and grounds it within matter, sanctifying the field of human action. When we observe, bless, or love, we draw divine light downward. When we act unjustly, we shatter the vessels anew. Creation, in the Zoharic sense, is the constant work of harmonizing heaven and earth, uniting the scattered sparks with their source. So the beginning of Genesis, Bereshit bara Elohim et Hashamim vit haaretz, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, describes not a chronological origin but an eternal pattern. The heavens are the upper sefirot, the inner lights of the divine intellect. The earth is Malkut, the realm of manifestation. The whole Torah, says the Zohar, is written in the language of the upper world but clothed in the garments of the lower. To read creation is to awaken to the ongoing act of divine becoming. And when the Holy One ceased from his work on the seventh day and blessed it, it was not cessation but consummation, the wedding of the supernal bride and the transcendent king, the return of light to its source. In that rest lies the pulse of all existence, the silent inhalation after the exhalation of creation. Thus, every Sabbath echoes that first Sabbath, when the universe was complete and the infinite delighted in its reflection, saying, Tav miyad, very good, meaning the union of opposites, the harmony of light and vessel, of heaven and earth, of creation. When the first light had descended and the worlds found their measure, the Infinite One looked into the mirror of wisdom and saw therein the form of Adam, the image of the upper world reflected below. Yet this Adam was not yet flesh, but an idea, a configuration of light within the body of Adam Kadmon, the primordial archetype whose limbs are the 10 sefirot. From the crown of Keter down to the feet of Malkut, Adam Kadmon encompassed all realities, a living temple in which every emanation had its place. From that celestial blueprint, the Holy One brought forth a being of dust and breath, uniting the lowest and the highest in a single form. The Zohar says that when it is written, Vayetzer Adonai Elohim et Hadam Afarmin, Hadama, the Lord God formed the man from the dust of the ground, the word Vayetzer, he formed is written with 2 yods, for within man there are 2 formations, one of the upper world, one of the lower. The upper form is the soul from the breath of God. The lower form is the vessel drawn from the earth. The soul is from the side of Bina, the supernal mother, while the body arises from Malkut, the feminine earth below. Thus, man is the bridge between Shekinah and her source, the union of heaven and earth. The breath that entered Adam was not mere air but the effulgence of Neshama, the living soul, descending through Zir Anpin, the configuration of divine attributes that mediates between the infinite and creation. In that moment, Adam became a microcosm of the tree of life, his heart as Tiferet, his intellect as Chokmah and Bina, his spine as the middle pillar uniting right and left, mercy and judgment. The whole creation was contained within him. The angels bowed to his form, for they saw reflected in him the structure of their own origin. The Garden of Eden into which he was placed is not merely a place of delight, but the world of Atzilut, the realm of divine intimacy. Its far rivers flow from the 4 channels of the supernal garden, Chizd, Jevira, Tiferet, and Malkut, and through them life descends into the worlds below. The trees of the garden are the Sefirot themselves, bearing the fruits of divine illumination. The tree of life, Etz HaAyin, stands at the center, the flow of pure emanation through the middle pillar, while the tree of knowledge of good and evil stands at the threshold of duality, the border between pure unity and the world of mixture. Adam was placed there to till and to guard it, meaning to tend the balance of the worlds through conscious awareness. His task was not agricultural but theurgic, to maintain the harmony between the upper and lower Sefirot, to unite the Holy One, blessed be he, and his Shekinah through the offering of intention, Kavanah. As long as Adam remained in that state of transparent reflection, all worlds were joined, his words shaped the flow of divine light, his thoughts were creative acts. But then the mystery of separation entered. The Zohar teaches that before the fall, the feminine was contained within the masculine, Eve within Adam, as the Nukva of Zir Anpin lies concealed within him before their union. When it is said that God caused Adam to sleep and took one of his sides, the sleep signifies a concealment of consciousness, a necessary dimming of the supernal light so that differentiation could emerge. Eve is the revelation of Malkut, the Shekinah drawn forth to stand face to face with her beloved. The act of separation was itself holy, for without the other, there can be no return to unity. Yet in the garden's midst stood the serpent, symbol of the Nachash HaKadmoni, the primordial force of distortion. It is not mere animal but a current of divine energy that became self-referential, turning the light inward upon itself. In Lurianic terms, this is the shattering of the vessels within the microcosm of the human soul. The serpent whispered that you shall be as gods, awakening the awareness of selfhood, the descent from unity into duality. Adam and Eve ate, that is, they internalized the knowledge of separation, and in that instant the harmony of the Sefirot was disrupted. Where once divine light flowed freely from Keter through all the channels, now encountered resistance, blockage, fragmentation. The Shekinah, once unified with her source, descended and became estranged from the upper realms. The expulsion from Eden is therefore not a punishment, but but a description of cosmic exile, the scattering of divine sparks into the realm of matter, where they await their restoration through human action. The garments of skin given to Adam and Eve after the fall were not merely coverings of flesh, but the denser forms of consciousness that cloak the soul in mortality. Yet the same verse conceals hope, for the Hebrew word for garments gotned or was once written as garments of light gotned or with aleph, in the supernal state. Through teshuvah, return, these garments can again become luminous. Humanity's journey through history is the long ascent back toward that light, the rejoining of the bride and bridegroom, Malkut and Tiferet, Eve and Adam. The serpent itself, once the adversary, becomes the rod of Moses, transformed into a channel of healing when subdued by divine intent. Thus, the story of Adam and Eve is the story of every soul, born from unity, descending into the labyrinth of knowledge, and yearning for reunion. The Zohar says that when the human heart prays in love and awe, the Holy One and his Shekinah embrace once more in the garden above. Each act of compassion is a leaf restored to the tree of life, each blessing a spark returned to its source. The exile of Eden continues until all consciousness awakens to the truth that the garden was never lost, only veiled. For within every breath, the same divine presence that formed Adam still speaks, saying, Eika, where are you, inviting the soul to remember itself. And so, creation moves through concealment toward revelation. The garden awaits within, where knowledge becomes wisdom and good and evil are reconciled in the radiance of divine understanding. In that stillness, the two become one again, and the voice that walked in the garden at the cool of day is heard once more, not above, but within the heart that has returned to the beginning. After the exile from the garden, the divine currents that once flowed in perfect harmony began to divide and clash within the human soul. The breath of the infinite still pulsed within Adam and Eve, yet the light was now refracted through the veil of separation, and the balance between right and left, mercy and judgment, love and severity, trembled like a scale unsteady upon its fulcrum. From this imbalance were born two children, Cain and Abel, the twin embodiments of the dual current that animates creation. Cain came forth first, drawn from the residue of the first emission of life after the fall. His soul arose from the left side of the tree, the side of Jevira, of fire, of strength and self-assertion. He was the power form, the architect, the one who sought mastery over earth. Abel, born second, came from the right side, from Cheesed, pure outpouring of love, softness, vapor. His very name Hevel means breath, for he was as transient and luminous as a prayer. The Zohar teaches that these two were not merely men, but archetypes of the two currents that move through every being, the impulse to dominate and the impulse to surrender, the force of creation and the force of return. Both brought offerings to the Holy One, Cain of the fruits of the ground, Abel of the firstlings of his flock. Outwardly, both acts were pious, yet inwardly they differed in vibration. Cain's offering rose from the toil of his hands, but also from the ego's hunger for recognition, Abel's from the spontaneous delight of the heart. In the language of the sefirot, Cain offered from Malkut without first aligning with the upper channels. Abel's offering ascended through Yesod and Tiferet, uniting below with above. Thus, the fire of heaven consumed Abel's gift, for it found in it a likeness to itself, a flame that longs upward. But Cain's remained upon the earth, weighed down by density, heavy with the residue of self. When the offering was not accepted, the light of Cain's countenance darkened. The Zohar says this shadow was not anger alone, but the stirring of dinim, harsh judgments, within his soul, sparks of Jevira unsoftened by mercy. God's words to him, "Why is your face fallen? If you do well, shall you not be lifted?" were not rebuke but an invitation to tikkun, to raise the fallen sparks within him, to sweeten his Jevira through love. Yet Cain could not perceive the hidden mercy within the voice semicolon. The vessel of his heart was too rigid, and thus the light of rebuke shattered it. In the field, which the sages interpret as the field of the world, the realm of Malkut, the Shekinah's dwelling, Cain rose against his brother and slew him. This was not only the first murder in the physical world but the reenactment of the cosmic Shever HaKelim, the breaking of the vessels, played out in the human microcosm. The divine currents, meant to balance each other, collided violently instead. Abel, representing the inner light, ascended as vapor, the spirit returning to its source, while Cain, representing the vessel, remained empty, heavy with guilt. In him, the exile of the divine presence deepened. The blood of Abel cried from the ground, the voice of Malkut calling upward to the heart of Tiferet, demanding restoration. The earth that had opened to receive the blood became the mirror of divine compassion, concealing the crime yet bearing witness to it. In the mystical sense, that cry became the origin of prayer, the ascent of the Shekinah seeking reunion with her beloved. The tears of Abel's blood are the rivers that feed all lamentation and all yearning for return. God's question, "Where is Abel, your brother?" is the same voice that once asked Adam, "Where are you?" The divine inquiry into the lost self. Cain's answer, "Am I my brother's keeper?" reveals the full depth of the exile. The forgetfulness that all beings are one, that brother and self are two faces of the same light. Yet even in his fall, mercy enveloped him. The mark placed upon Cain is one of the most hidden mysteries of the Zohar, a sign not of punishment but of protection. For even in judgment, the Holy One encloses compassion. Even the fallen spark carries the potential for redemption. The mark is the glimmer of Bina, the supernal understanding that surrounds severity and softens it. Cain was driven east of Eden, into the land of Nod, the realm of wandering, the world of broken vessels and restless souls. Yet from him would rise builders of cities, founders of arts, makers of instruments. The divine spark of Jevira, though distorted, is not evil. It is the force that shapes and refines, the energy that brings civilization into being. Abel's line ascended in spirit, Cain's continued in form, and both together perpetuate the rhythm of creation, ascent and descent, light and vessel, spirit and body. The sages teach that Abel's soul was later reincarnated in Moses, the shepherd who offered himself entirely to his flock, completing what Abel had begun. And Cain's essence was transformed through repentance into the line of Jethro, who recognized the One and gave his daughter to Moses, a reconciliation of opposites, a healing of the primordial wound. In this way, the Zohar reveals that no act, however dark, is beyond the reach of divine repair. All stories curve back toward the light. So the tale of Cain and Abel is the story of the human condition itself. Within every soul, Cain and Abel contend, the will to possess and the will to offer, the fire that burns downward and the flame that rises upward. Redemption is the moment when the two are reconciled, when strength becomes service and passion becomes prayer. Then the field, once stained with blood, becomes once again the field of blessing, where the Shekinah rests, and the voice of the brother no longer cries from the ground, for it has been gathered into peace. After the shadow of Cain fell upon the earth, time itself began to stretch, and the rhythm of creation slowed into cycles of birth, decay, and renewal. The light that once flowed unbroken from the infinite now pulsed through the filters of generations, refracted through the vessels of mortal lineage. In the days before the flood, the world was still half transparent to the upper realms. The veil between heaven and earth was not yet fully woven. The names of those ancient ones, Adam, Seth, Enosh, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah, are not merely genealogical marks, but living seals of the sephirotic descent, the gradual thickening of divine energy as it clothed itself, matter. Each generation was a rung upon the ladder of Histocket Hor, the withdrawal of the primordial light. As the divine radiance descended, it clothed itself more deeply in the garments of nature, and the souls of humankind became heavier with form. Yet even in this concealment there remained sparks of the original glory, hidden tzaddikim whose breath sustained the balance of the worlds. The Zohar calls them pillars of the earth, the Yesedit, channels through which the infinite continues to pulse into creation. In the age of Seth, the line of holiness was renewed, for he was born in the likeness of Adam, meaning he retained a glimmer of the supernal image, the configuration of Zir Anpin. His descendants carried the whisper of prophecy, though dimmed by the thickening air of the material world. Yet with Enosh, idolatry began, humanity's first turning from the invisible toward the visible. They sought to honor the divine but mistook the vessel for the light, bowing before the stars and forces that were only emissaries of the higher will. Thus the spiritual structure of creation began to tilt. The equilibrium between the upper and lower worlds wavered. Still, in each generation, the infinite mercy planted a spark of rectification. Mahalalel, the one who praises God, drew down the vibration of Had, splendor, through song and contemplation. Jared, from whose name the sages derive Yered, descent, marked the point when divine consciousness sank most deeply into the world of matter. The higher angels no longer walked openly among men, and yet one among them, Enoch, would reverse that descent. Enoch, the son of Jared, is one of the great mysteries of the Zohar. He walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. In the inner sense, Enoch represents the secret of Yesod, the righteous foundation that unites heaven and earth. His walking signifies continual ascension through meditation, until his corporeal garment was refined into light. The Zohar calls him Metatron, the great angel who stands as the Sar HaPanim, the prince of the divine presence. Through Enoch, the line of Adam was lifted once more into the supernal realm, and a path of ascent was established for all souls. Yet even as holiness rose, corruption deepened below. The descendants of Cain had multiplied, filling the world with the arts of metal and song, but their creations became reflections of their own imbalance, vessels without light, power without mercy. The children of Seth and the children of Cain mingled, the boundaries between sacred and profane dissolved. The sages speak of the sons of God who took the daughters of men, which the Zohar interprets as the intermingling of angelic forces with human desire, energies from the world of Yetzirah descending into the physical without proper vessels to receive them. This caused further shattering, further dispersion of sparks into the dense fabric of the world. The long lives of those generations, hundreds of years each, reflect not chronological duration, but the expansive subtlety of time when consciousness was closer to eternity. Their years were measured not in revolutions of the sun, but in cycles of divine inhalation and exhalation. Yet as the generations passed, that rhythm shortened, each life contracted as awareness thickened. Mortality itself is the condensation of divine energy into limitation, a necessary shadow through which the light must pass to rediscover itself. When Methuselah was born, the balance trembled on the edge. His name, when he dies, it shall come, foretold the great flood of renewal. He embodied the last vestige of prelapsarian vitality, a bridge between the world of long spiritual breath and the world of dense material forgetting. His grandson Noah, the final figure of that age, would inherit both the purity of Adam's breath and the heaviness of Cain's soil. Through him, the cosmic purification would unfold. Thus, the generations before the flood are the story of descent in concealment, the gradual closing of heaven's eye, the slow crystallization of spirit into matter. But beneath the surface of corruption, the divine plan of tikkun, rectification, was already germinating. The infinite does not abandon its creation, rather, it veils itself to be rediscovered. Each descent conceals an ascent waiting to be born. The flood that would come is not destruction but immersion, a baptism of worlds, washing the shattered vessels so that new configurations might arise. In the vision of the Zohar, those ancient patriarchs still exist as constellations in the upper world, guardians of the channels that link the human heart to its source. Their names are written upon the limbs of Adam Kadmon. Their stories are the stages by which divine consciousness descends and ascends again. And so the Torah, in listing their years and beginnings, whispers the mystery of eternity in time, infinity in finitude. For the soul, too, is born, descends, multiplies, and dies, only to be taken again, as Enoch was, into the embrace of the Endless One. When the measure of corruption was full and the balance of the worlds trembled upon the edge of dissolution, the Holy One, blessed be He, looked into the deep mirror of creation and saw that every channel of divine flow had become clogged with the sediment of human desire. The sons of the earth had turned the currents of Chesed and Jevurah inward, fashioning idols of themselves, making the vessels more solid than the light they were meant to contain. The earth was filled with violence, not merely in the outer sense of bloodshed, but in the inner sense of disharmony, the violent wrenching of the Shekinah from her source. Then the decree of purification was issued, not as wrath, but as the necessity of mercy in its most severe form. The Zohar teaches that the flood was a return to the primal waters of Bina, the supernal womb, in which the world would be dissolved and remade. Before new creation can emerge, the old must melt back into formlessness. So the infinite drew again upon the mystery of the Tzimtzum, contracting His presence within the waters, allowing the lower worlds to be submerged in order that they might be reborn. Among all the souls of that generation, one stood as a remnant of the first light, Noah, whose name means rest or comfort. The sages say that Noah found favor, Chen, in the eyes of God, and the Zohar notes that Chen is the mirror of Noach, the same letters reversed, for he was the reflection of divine grace turned back toward its source. In him, the sefirot still aligned. He was a small image of the tzaddik Yesod olam, the righteous one who sustains the world. When the command came to build the ark, Noah was instructed to make it of gopher wood and seal it within and without with pitch, for every vessel of preservation must be doubly sealed, outwardly from the turbulence of the external world, inwardly from the turbulence of the The ark was not merely a ship, but a symbolic configuration of the tree of life. Its 3 levels correspond to the 3 lower worlds, Bariah, Yetzirah, and Asiyah. The upper covering is Atzilut, the canopy of divine emanation. Within it, the animals represent the energies of the cosmos, every species of instinct, impulse, and angelic power gathered into one harmonic vessel. The dimensions of the ark, its length, breadth, and height, are measures of the divine name. The Zohar says that the ark's cubic proportion mirrors the tefillin shel Rosh, the divine mind sealed in perfect balance of left, right, and center. The window of Sahar that Noah placed in the ark is the eye of Tiferet, through which the light of Bina entered during the storm. For even in the flood of judgment, a window of mercy must remain open. The waters began to rise, and the fountains of the deep were broken up. The waters of the deep Tehom Rabbah are the hidden forces of Jevira, the constraining energies released from their bounds. The windows of heaven are the channels of Chesed, pouring forth unmeasured light. When these 2 waters met, above and below, the world was overwhelmed, not by chaos, but by the union of opposites. The flood was the cosmic mikveh, the ritual immersion of creation, returning it to the womb of its making. Inside the ark, Noah dwelled in stillness while the world outside dissolved. In that sanctuary of wood and breath, he enacted the mystery of the tzaddik, the one who shelters life within himself while all else returns to the source. Every species within the ark found its place according to its root in the divine order. The beasts corresponding to Netzach, the birds to Had, the creeping things to Malkut. Thus, Noah's care for them was not a task of survival alone, but a liturgy of restoration. He tended the inner forces of creation, feeding each according to its need, maintaining the fragile harmony that would later unfold into the new world. After 40 days and 40 nights, 40, the number of gestation and transformation, the rain ceased. The ark rested upon Mount Ararat, whose name means the curse reversed, for through purification, judgment had been sweetened into blessing. The dove sent forth returned with an olive leaf, symbol of Bina's compassion descending once again into Malkut. The Zohar says that the dove was the Shekinah herself, wandering through the ruins of the world until she found rest in the renewed heart of creation. When Noah emerged, he built an altar, offering burnt offerings of every clean beast. The smoke ascended as the sweet savor of Yesod, joining Tiferet to Malkut, and the Holy One smelled the pleasing odor, not of flesh, but of restored harmony. Then God swore never again to destroy the earth, sealing the covenant with the sign of the rainbow, the bow of light that bridges heaven and earth. In the secret doctrine, this rainbow is the arc of the sefirot, the reflection of divine light through the prism of creation. Its colors correspond to the divine attributes refracted in mercy: red of Jevira, blue of Chesed, green of Tiferet, gold of Netzach, silver of Had, and violet of Malkut, all joined in the white brilliance of Keter, the hidden unity behind them. The covenant given to Noah is the renewal of the cosmic order, the re-establishment of tikkun after Shevira. Through him, the human race was reconstituted as the mirror of divine patience, no longer in the innocence of Eden, but in the endurance of repentance. Yet even this renewal was partial, for the seeds of corruption lingered. The shadow of separation still followed humanity into its new world. The vine that Noah later planted, the vineyard that led to his shame, reveals that even after purification, the dualities of spirit and flesh remain to be reconciled. Still, the promise of the rainbow endures, that between every storm and every light there is covenant. The flood, for all its terror, was not the wrath of a vengeful deity, but the compassion of the infinite cleansing the vessels of creation. The Zohar says, when the world was drowned, the Holy One wept, and his tears became pearls in the deep. Those pearls are the souls that still shine through suffering, remnants of the ark floating upon the waters of history, awaiting the final gathering. Thus the story of Noah is the story of cosmic renewal, of descent into dissolution, and rise into grace. In each human heart, there is an ark waiting to be built, a vessel of silence and faith, sealed within and without, floating upon the floods of time. Within it all opposites dwell, beast and bird, heaven and earth, mercy and judgment. And when at last the dove of the Shekinah returns with the leaf of peace, the rainbow of reconciliation appears, the sign that even in destruction there is hidden compassion, and in the deepest waters, the reflection of the infinite still shimmers. After the deluge, when the waters had withdrawn and the earth again clothed herself in green, the sons of Noah multiplied and filled the plain of Shinar. From the residue of the flood they arose, bearing within them both the memory of divine judgment and the desire to secure themselves against it. Thus the human heart, which once trembled before the infinite, turned again toward self-sufficiency, mistaking unity of language for the unity of spirit. The Zohar calls this the generation of dispersion, Dor HaHaflaga, whose error was not in their wish to be one but in the misplacement of that unity. They sought to ascend through artifice, to bind heaven to earth by their own ingenuity rather than by divine alignment. Their words, "Let us build a city and a tower whose top shall reach unto heaven," conceal the deeper rebellion of the intellect that would make itself a crown. For the tower they sought to raise was the inverted tree of life, constructed from below upward, brick upon brick, rather than descending from the supernal root. In the language of the Lurianic sages, the Tower of Babel represents the ascent of the feminine waters, Me'anukvin, in a distorted form, an arousal from below, not harmonized with the divine will. Humanity attempted to draw down light without vessel, to seize the mysteries of the upper worlds through sheer collective will. But such ascent without humility is perilous. It awakens the dinim, the harsh judgments that guard the gates of heaven. Thus, as they stacked the bricks of pride, their speech was confounded, and their unity shattered. The Zohar describes their work as the attempt to reconstitute the Keter of the lower worlds through human artifice, a counterfeit crown built of clay. Each brick they made, baked in fire, symbolized the hardened vessel formed without divine intention. The human ego as the shell, klippa, around a spark of light. The mortar they used was the residue of the flood, the coagulated remnants of the previous dissolution, now reanimated in defiance of divine order. At first, the tower seemed to rise unimpeded. It pierced the clouds, and the builders rejoiced in their unity of speech, for they spoke one tongue, the language of Dot untempered by Chokmah or Bina. The Midrash says they spoke in the language of Adam, the primal tongue of creation, but used it not to praise, but to command. They sought the Shekinah's dwelling, but without reverence, they wanted not to receive but to possess. In this lies the secret of their downfall, the attempt to reverse the flow of emanation, to make Malkut ascend without the blessing of Tiferet. Then the Holy One, blessed be He, said, "Behold, they are one people," and this they begin to do. The unity of men can be both sanctified and corrupted, for there is a unity of holiness and a unity of the shell. The first binds the worlds together through humility. The second binds them through coercion, through the imitation of divine order without divine light. Therefore, the Holy One descended, not to destroy, but to restore the balance of dispersion. For sometimes the breaking of unity is itself the preservation of truth. The confusion of tongues, Balal Sephidim, was not a punishment but a rectification. Speech, which had become a single instrument of self-glorification, was shattered into 70 languages, each carrying a spark of divine revelation hidden within its limitation. What had been one voice of pride became a chorus of fragments, and though they could no longer build the tower, they began to build civilization. From dispersion arose differentiation, from differentiation, culture, from culture, the possibility of dialogue. In the Zohar's secret reading, the 70 tongues correspond to the 70 faces of Torah, and the scattering of speech becomes the preparation for the gathering at Sinai, where the divine voice would again speak through tongues of fire. The destruction of Babel thus prefigures the restoration of speech in holiness, the shattered voice that would later become the revelation of Torah. Each language became a vessel for a particular aspect of the divine name, refracting the single word that once united all. Thus the Holy One's descent to confound them was an act of mercy, dispersing the power that might have led to total spiritual collapse. For if mankind had completed the tower, the worlds would have reversed their order, Malkut attempting to crown itself above Keter, and the flow of light would have been inverted, bringing another cosmic dissolution. The city and tower became ruins, but their echo remained as a warning. That speech is both the ladder and the abyss. In the Kabbalistic view, language itself is the most powerful instrument of creation and the most dangerous when severed from its source. Every word is a vessel, kli meant to hold light or. When words multiply without light, they become bricks, heavy, identical, without breath. When words flow from spirit, they become letters of fire, living conduits of divine energy. Thus the mystery of Babel is the mystery of misuse of dot, the false knowledge that seeks to unify without love. The dispersion of tongues is the divine scattering of sparks, ensuring that no single language, nation, or mind may claim to contain the fullness of truth. Each tongue now bears its fragment of the word, awaiting the final tikkun, the time when all speech will once more harmonize in the song of the Shekinah, restored through humility and wisdom. So the tower still rises within each generation, the structure of the intellect that seeks to reach heaven by its own strength. And in every soul, the Holy One descends to confound the inner language of pride, scattering it into silence, that a truer speech may be born. For the tongue must first be broken before it can utter the name. When language returns to praise rather than ambition, the tower becomes the temple, and the confusion of tongues becomes the music of prophecy. After the tongues were divided and the tower crumbled into dust, the voices of the nations scattered across the face of the earth. The 70 tongues became 70 shadows of the divine name, and among them the spark of unity slumbered, waiting for one soul to awaken it again. Then in the land of Ur-Kasdim, the furnace of the Chaldeans, the seat of false lights and astrology, a flame arose from the ashes of dispersion. That flame was Abram, son of Terach, born into idolatry yet destined to restore the lost harmony of speech and faith. The Zohar calls Abram the awakening of Chesed, the right arm of the supernal Adam reaching once more into the lower worlds. For where Noah was the rest of judgment, Abram became the motion of mercy. When the Holy One said to him, Lech lecha, go forth for yourself, the words were not merely a command to travel but a summons to ascend. Go forth from the land of externality, from the limitations of your nature, from the house of your father, which is the shell of your. The journey was not geographical but ontological. Abram was being called from the shell, klippa, of his world into the open expanse of the divine will. In the mystical reading, Lech lecha means go to yourself, for in the divine paradox the destination is within. Abram's path led outward through Canaan, but inward toward the root of his soul. In leaving his country, he enacted the Tzimtzum hanimi, the inner contraction that allows the self to become a vessel. Each step of his journey was a rectification of the world's dispersion. Where Babel had sought to ascend through pride, Abram ascended through surrender. The Zohar teaches that when Abram walked the earth, the Shekinah walked with him. Wherever he built an altar, she descended and rested upon the stone. Each altar was a restoration of the axis between Malkut and Tiferet, a miniature temple amid the wilderness. He did not build a tower of brick, but an altar of living breath. He called upon the name of YHVH, reuniting speech and light, setting the world's fragmented words back into harmony. In the heavens, this movement awakened the parts of Zir Anpin, the configuration of the lower sefirot, which had lain dormant since the flood. Through Abram's acts of kindness, the flow of Chesed began to rise again toward Bina, sweetening the judgments and softening the contractions of the previous age. For Abram's hospitality was not mere moral virtue, it was the mystical act of opening the channels of divine abundance. Every stranger welcomed was a spark reclaimed, every meal shared a union of worlds. When Abram gazed at the stars and heard the divine promise that his seed would be as numerous as the heavens, the Holy One was teaching him the mystery of prefiguration. The stars are the souls awaiting descent into the world. They are the sparks that fell during the Sheveret HaKelim, the shattering of the primordial vessels. Abram's faith was the vessel that would contain them. His descendants would become the instruments of tikkun, the repair of cosmic order through the covenant. The covenant itself, established in the vision of the flaming torch passing between the divided pieces, reveals the secret of divine contraction and revelation. The divided animals represent the two sides of the divine name, mercy and judgment, and the flame that passed between them is the hidden light of Tiferet, reconciling the opposites. Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a great darkness fell upon him, for to enter covenant is to descend into the shadow of Bina, where all souls are weighed. Yet out of that darkness came the whisper of eternal promise, that light would always return through the line of faith. In that vision, the exile of his descendants was already inscribed, "Your seed shall be strangers in a land not their own." The Zohar says this was not punishment but process, for the spark scattered in Egypt must be gathered again through bondage and redemption. Abram's life thus became the archetype of Lech lecha, the continual leaving of one's settled being for the sake of higher truth. Every exile is a preparation for revelation, every descent, a contraction for expansion. In the Lurianic understanding, Abram's covenant marks the rectification of Yesod, the foundation of divine transmission. His circumcision, later commanded, symbolizes the removal of the foreskin, the shell that conceals the covenantal flow. The physical act mirrors the cosmic one, the clearing of obstruction so that divine light may again pour into the world without distortion. The blood of circumcision is the seal of the covenant in Malkut, binding heaven and earth in a bond of living flesh. From that moment forward, Abram became Avraham, the father of many nations. The addition of the letter He, taken from the divine name, infused him with the breath of Bina, the mother principle. Through this, he became not merely a wanderer but a conduit for divine emanation, the first human vessel fully aligned with the tree of life. His wife Sarai, transformed to Sarah, received the same infusion, that she might conceive the child of promise, Isaac, the laughter of divine joy emerging from impossibility. Thus the call of Abram is not a command to one man but the beginning of cosmic reconciliation. Where the generation of Babel sought to unify through coercion, Abram unified through faith. Where they built towers of separation, he built altars of connection. In him, the Shekinah found her first resting place since Eden, a heart that could hold her presence without shattering. The journey of Abram is the journey of the soul through every age, the leaving of the known for the unknown, the purification of will, the hearing of the silent command that says, "Go to yourself, go into the root of your being, where the infinite calls you by name." And when the soul answers, the world begins again. After the covenant was sealed in light, and Abram walked in the breath of the name, a silence fell upon the camp. Years passed, and the promise of offspring remained unfulfilled. Sarah, the vessel of the supernal mother, looked upon her barrenness as upon a veiled mystery. For she knew, though dimly, that what is withheld is often what holds the greatest light. Yet in her human longing she turned to her maidservant, Hagar, the Egyptian, a daughter of Mitzrayim, land of constriction, and said to Abram, "Go to her, perhaps I shall be built up through her." In the Zohar's secret teaching, this act was not mere desperation but a cosmic experiment, an attempt to draw light through the left-hand channel when the right was closed. For Sarah and Abram represent Bina and Chizd, the supernal father and mother, while Hagar is the aspect of Malkut fallen into exile, the Shekinah dwelling among the shells. To unite Abram with Hagar was to attempt to redeem the captive sparks hidden within the Egyptian root, to call forth life from within the shadow of constriction. When Hagar conceived, she looked upon her mistress with pride, for the lower vessel, having received light, mistook itself for the source. This is the illusion of independent power, the ancient echo of Babel's sin. The Zohar says that in that moment, the Shekinah veiled herself again, for the order of emanation had been reversed, the maid had risen above the mistress, and the flow from Tiferet to Malkut became clouded with judgment. Thus Sarah's affliction of Hagar was not cruelty, but a metaphysical correction, a Jevurah sweetening the imbalance of Chizd. When Hagar fled into the wilderness, she encountered the angel of YHVH by a spring of water. The spring is Yesod, the well of living flow between heaven and earth. The angel's voice, "Return to your mistress, and submit yourself under her hand," was the divine call for Malkut to realign beneath Bina, for the lower worlds to find again their place within the order of compassion. Yet the angel also gave her a promise. "Behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, for the Lord has heard your affliction." In this mystery lies a profound paradox. Ishmael, God hears, is both a seed of judgment and a vessel of mercy. He embodies the unrefined Chizd, the force of divine kindness flowing through an unrectified vessel. The Zohar compares him to the wild ass of a man, a power of vitality and independence unbridled by form, yet within that wildness glimmers the spark of redemption. For nothing born of Abram is without purpose. Even the branches that grow outside the trunk retain the sap of holiness. Hagar's return to Sarah is the return of the Shekinah to her higher source, but also the prophecy of recurring exile. The child born from this union will not inherit the covenant, yet he will carry the trace of the name in his very being. Ishmael's destiny is to wander, to dwell before the face of all his brethren. In the Kabbalistic view, this wandering is not punishment, but preparation, a scattering of energy across the desert of history. The descendants of Ishmael hold fragments of the unredeemed light, the sparks of Chizd not yet harmonized with Jevurah. The birth of Ishmael therefore marks the first externalization of the covenant, the first manifestation of divine promise outside its intended vessel. It is the overflow of light beyond its measure. In the Lurianic system, this corresponds to the shattering of the outer shells, when the supernal light, too abundant for its container, spills into the lower realms. Thus Ishmael's birth prefigures the recurring cycle of sefirot and tikkun that will shape the rest of Genesis, every overflow of divine promise leading to a temporary exile, every exile preparing the ground for greater repair. When Abram heard the word of the angel and saw Hagar return, he perceived that even within apparent error there was divine orchestration. For the Holy One draws light through crooked channels so that no corner of creation remains untouched by mercy. Ishmael, though outside the covenant, would later stand as witness to Isaac's burial, signifying that no seed of Abraham is utterly cast away. The Zohar says that when Ishmael cried in the wilderness and God heard him, the angels protested, saying, "Will you save one whose descendants will oppress your children?" But the Holy One answered, "I judge each soul as it is, not as it will be." This is the mystery of Bina's compassion, the hearing of the cry of the outcast. Even in exile, the divine ear is inclined toward the broken heart. So Hagar's well becomes the well of the living one who sees me, Bir Lahirwa. It is the secret of Dot within exile, the spark of consciousness that knows itself seen by the infinite even in abandonment. Every soul that wanders in the wilderness of its own making may yet find that spring, the place where vision and mercy meet. Thus the story of Hagar and Ishmael reveals that the covenant's shadow is not its negation, but its extension. The Holy One's plan is vast enough to contain both chosen and unchosen, order and overflow, Isaac and Ishmael. The Shekinah moves among them all, gathering the sparks scattered by haste and pride. For every exile carries within it a promise waiting to ripen, and every wilderness conceals a spring of living water. When Abram had walked many years in the light of promise yet without its visible fulfillment, the Holy One appeared to him again, not in a dream or through an angel, but as the voice of the infinite that issues from silence. The Torah says, "And the Lord appeared to Abram and said, I am El Shaddai, walk before me and be perfect." Each of these words resounds through the supernal realms. El Shaddai, the name that signifies limitation and sufficiency, the boundary that holds creation within measure, revealed itself to the man who had learned to move beyond measure. To walk before me means not to follow, but to move within the divine gaze, to let every step be seen and sanctified. Be perfect to me is the call to wholeness through holy incompleteness, for the perfection of man, the Zohar teaches, lies in the willing removal of excess, in the cutting away of what conceals light. Thus came the command of circumcision, the Brit Milah, the covenant in the flesh that seals the union of heaven and earth. In the language of the mysteries, the foreskin, Orla, is the shell that conceals Yesod, the channel through which divine influx flows into Malkut. From the beginning of creation, this channel had been obstructed by the residue of separation, the lingering darkness of the first concealment. The act of circumcision, therefore, is not a mere physical sign, but a cosmic surgery, the removal of the obstruction that hinders the descent of blessing. When Abram obeyed and drew the blade upon his own flesh, he enacted upon his body what the Holy One had performed upon the cosmos in the first Tzimtzum, a contraction that makes space for revelation. Before this act, he was Abram, exalted father, the aspect of cheesed without limit, pouring forth endlessly but lacking form. After the covenant, he became Abraham, the addition of the letter He, symbol of Bina, the divine womb. The He joined to his name signifies the infusion of the mother principle, which gives shape and containment to mercy. Cheesed was now balanced by Jevira, the flood of love was sealed by boundary. Thus Abraham became the first Adam Shalom, the whole man, the restored image of the supernal Adam in whom all sefirot are aligned. The act of circumcision on the 8th day was commanded for his descendants, for 8 is the number of transcendence beyond the 7 days of creation. It is the octave of sanctity, the moment when the flow of divine energy steps beyond nature into covenant. The foreskin removed represents the exile of the Shekinah, the veil of the feminine that must be lifted for full union to occur. The blood of the circumcision is the blood of Malkut, the red stream that binds the lower world to its source, transforming flesh into vessel. The Zohar teaches that when Abraham performed the circumcision, the supernal worlds trembled with joy, for the flow from Yesod to Malkut was restored, and the divine presence descended once more upon the earth. Angels came to bless the covenant, and the name of Shaddai shone upon his body as a living seal. The wound became a gate of light, not a mark of loss, but of creative opening. Through that cut, the Shekinah would later pass to bring forth Isaac, the laughter of divine fulfillment. In the Lurianic understanding, the Brit Milah corresponds to the rectification of the 288 fallen sparks, Nitzatsin, that scattered in the shattering. Each spark seeks return through the gate of Yesod. Circumcision is the purification of that gate. The human act mirrors the divine process, the cutting away of the klippah so that the light of Bina may flow unimpeded into the lower realms. In this way, the covenant of Abraham becomes the prototype for all tikkun. Every restoration requires a separation, every revelation a concealment lifted. When the covenant was sealed, Abraham fell upon his face, and God spoke to him as to an equal. The Zohar says that in that moment, the Shekinah rested upon his prostration as upon Mount Sinai, for his humility became the throne of divine speech. The promise expanded, "You shall be the father of many nations." The covenant was not only for his fleshly seed but for every soul that would later attach itself to the path of faith. For in the secret of the Brit lies the reconciliation of the universal and the particular, the infinite choosing one line through which to illuminate all lines. The name of Sarah too was changed. Her yod was transformed into a he, completing the divine pair. Where one she was Sarai, my princess, bound to one, she became Sarah, princess of all. The union of Abraham and Sarah thus mirrors the union of Tiferet and Malkut, the marriage of the divine masculine and feminine within creation. Their covenantal love is the microcosm of cosmic union, and the sign upon their bodies is the mark of that eternal intimacy. From that time onward, the covenant of circumcision became the mark of belonging not by race but by resonance, the signature of souls who agree to be vessels of divine flow. Every cut is a remembrance of contraction, every drop of blood a spark returning to its source. The flesh becomes letter, the body becomes scripture. The angels of the covenant, according to the Zohar, sing a hymn whenever the act is performed in holiness. They call it the song of the eighth day, for in it the human and divine rejoice together. Man offering his boundary, God offering his presence. And when the blade touches the flesh, the veil between the worlds thins, and the name of Shaddai gleams again upon the gate of life. Thus the covenant of circumcision is not an end but a threshold, the passage from potential into embodiment, from promise into incarnation. The infinite inscribes his signature upon finite flesh, declaring that the divine flow will never again remain abstract, but will dwell within the living body of the world. In Abraham's obedience, the sephirotic tree found equilibrium, Chesed restrained, Jevurah sweetened, Tiferet illuminated, Yesod opened, and Malkut sanctified. The world became capable once more of bearing the Shekinah's presence without collapse. The covenant is therefore the mystery of God entering history, and of man offering his very being as the dwelling place of light. After the covenant of the flesh was sealed and the light of El Shaddai shone upon Abraham's tent, 3 messengers descended from the higher worlds, clothed in the form of men. The Zohar teaches that these were not mere angels, but the 3 columns of the sephirotic tree, Michael of Chesed, Gabriel of Jevurah, and Raphael of Tiferet, manifesting as divine emissaries to enact 3 mysteries, healing, birth, and judgment. They came first to Abraham's door in the heat of the day, for the righteous open their tent even in the burning noon of trial. Abraham ran to meet them, embodying the supernal flow of Chesed, pouring hospitality upon the world as light upon the darkened firmament. The angels spoke of Sarah's conception, and their laughter echoed the laughter that would later name Isaac. The laughter of Bina made manifest, the impossible joy of divine promise made flesh. Yet as their message turned, their countenances grew grave, and the current of Jevurah began to stir. "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do?" said the Holy One, for the friend of God must witness both mercy and judgment. Thus was Abraham drawn into the council of heaven, the first human to stand as intercessor between the worlds. When the decree of Sodom and Gomorrah was revealed, Abraham stood before the infinite and pleaded, "Will you destroy the righteous with the wicked? Shall not the judge of all the earth do justice?" In the Zohar's reading, Abraham was not merely negotiating numbers. He was invoking the balance of the 10 sefirot. 50, 45, 40, 30, 20, 10, each number represents a diminution of divine vessels, the withdrawal of light through successive contractions. Abraham descended the ladder of mercy step by step, seeking the minimum spark that could justify existence. But when he reached 10, the full measure of the sefirot, and found not even that among them, silence fell. The structure of the world's holiness could not be found in Sodom. The sin of Sodom was not mere lust or cruelty, it was the perversion of Jevurah, the sealing of compassion beneath stone. They turned the law of restraint into a wall against mercy, closing the gates of generosity, forbidding kindness to the stranger. In their city, hospitality was outlawed, and the poor were punished for need. The Zohar calls Sodom the shell of Malkut, the kingdom turned inward upon itself, refusing the influx of Chizd. Therefore, their destruction came not from arbitrary wrath, but from the inner logic of imbalance. When the vessel no longer receives, it shatters. That night, the angels entered the city and came to Lot, the nephew of Abraham. Lot had learned hospitality in his uncle's house. His doorway was still open even in the city of closed hearts. The men of Sodom surrounded his house, demanding to violate his guests, for the unholy always seeks to desecrate the sacred image of visitation. Lot pleaded and offered even what was dearest to him, a tragic echo of Abraham's self-offering. But the mob was struck with blindness, a spiritual blindness born of their own cruelty. The angels then seized Lot and his family, commanding them to flee. "Do not look back," they said, "for to look back upon destruction is to cling to judgment." Yet Lot's wife turned, her heart still bound to the city's substance, and became a pillar of salt, the embodiment of Jevurah without Chizd, preservation without compassion. Salt preserves, but it also desiccates. She became the monument of sterile remembrance, the crystallized tear of divine severity. Then the heavens opened, and fire and brimstone rained upon the cities. The Zohar reveals that this was not fire in the earthly sense, but the descent of Dinim from Bina, the harsh judgments released when the channels of mercy are closed. The brimstone is the ashes of fallen Chizd, the sweetness burned into bitterness. Yet even in destruction, the divine measure is precise. The fire descends only where the imbalance has reached its limit, where the echo of compassion no longer resounds. Lot's flight into the mountains is the retreat of the Shekinah into her higher palace, withdrawing from the ruined vessels of Malkut. Yet within this retreat lies the seed of future repair. Lot's daughters, in their confusion, sought to preserve life through forbidden union, and from their offspring came Moab and Ammon, out of whom, generations later, would be born Ruth, the ancestress of David, and ultimately the Messiah. Thus from the ashes of Sodom, the spark of redemption was secretly planted. The deepest Jevurah becomes the womb of ultimate Chizd. In the Lurianic reading, Sodom's destruction was a cosmic rectification. The lower worlds had become clogged with the residues of pride and cruelty. The flames were the descent of the light of Tiferet breaking through the dense shells. The overturning of the cities is the inversion of the fallen Malkut, purging her so that she might once again receive the influx of the upper worlds. The smoke rising from the plain like the smoke of a furnace is the purification of the Klippot, their transformation into ascending vapors. Abraham rose early and looked toward the valley, and behold, he saw the smoke rising. The Zohar says he wept, not for the lost, but for the divine pain within the judgment, the tears of the Shekinah who must destroy what she once nourished. For every act of divine severity conceals a heartbreak. The infinite suffers within the limits he himself establishes. Yet Abraham's compassion, his willingness to intercede, remains the balancing force that keeps the world intact. The fire fell upon Sodom, but it did not consume all flesh, for Abraham's prayer stood like a shield over the earth. In this mystery, Sodom and Gomorrah become the mirror of every soul. When the heart grows closed, when mercy turns to salt, the inner fire descends and consumes what no longer yields life. But if even a remnant of righteousness remains, a single spark of open-heartedness, the city of the soul may yet be spared. Abraham's dialogue with the infinite continues within each of us, the voice that pleads for mercy even in the presence of judgment. Thus, the destruction of Sodom is not merely a tale of wrath but of divine equilibrium. It reveals that the same fire that destroys also refines, and that from every ruin, a thread of redemption wins its hidden way. The fire of Jevurah, tempered by Abraham's Chizd, becomes the light of Tiferet, the beauty of justice transfigured by compassion. And when the smoke clears, the covenant still stands, glowing upon the horizon like a dawn after storm, the remembrance that even the severest flame burns only to clear a space for mercy's return. When the covenant had been sealed and the door of Abraham's tent stood open to the angels of promise, a new current flowed through creation, the current of Jevira sweetened by cheese, the birth of measured joy. The scripture says, "And the Lord visited Sarah as he had said." The word pakid, visited, in the Zohar signifies not mere remembrance, but the awakening of the womb of Bina, the supernal mother who brings forth manifestation from potential. From that upper visitation, the Shekinah descended into Sarah, who had long been barren, and her barrenness was revealed as concealment, not absence, for all divine promises gestate in hiddenness until the appointed hour. The laughter that Sarah uttered in her old age was not mockery, as some suppose, but the trembling joy of Bina, beholding her reflection in Malkut. For when the upper mother opens her womb, the lower world responds with song. Thus the child to be born was called Yitzhak, from tzchak, laughter, the pure outburst of delight that erupts when impossibility yields to grace. Isaac's birth marks the descent of supernal joy into time, the emanation of Tiferet, harmony between judgment and mercy, male and female, heaven and earth. Yet the laughter of fulfillment awakens the shadow of separation. For the divine plan moves through polarity. One vessel must be filled even as another is emptied. In the household of Abraham, 2 women bore his seed, Sarah, the covenantal vessel, and Hagar, the Egyptian bondwoman who bore Ishmael. These 2 are not merely women of flesh, they are 2 aspects of Malkut, the lower Shekinah in exile and the higher Shekinah enthroned. Hagar, whose name means the stranger, represents the unrectified kingdom, still bound to the shell of the other side. Sarah, radiant in her old age, represents the Shekinah restored to her proper union with Tiferet. When Isaac was weaned and the house rejoiced, the scripture says that Sarah saw Ishmael mocking, but the Zohar teaches that this word conceals a mystery. Ishmael's laughter was not that of joy but of distortion. Tzchak turned toward the left side, laughter without holiness. He represents the force of cheese unbounded, mercy without measure, which when untethered becomes indulgence, chaos, and rebellion. Therefore, Sarah spoke as the voice of the upper Shekinah. Cast out this bondwoman and her son. It was not cruelty but cosmic necessity, the separation of the mixed vessels, the distinction between holy and profane. Abraham grieved deeply, for his love flowed toward both sons as light flows from a single source. Yet the Holy One said, "Listen to Sarah, for in Isaac shall your seed be called." The divine voice confirmed that the covenantal line must pass through the axis of Tiferet, not through the overflow of unrestrained cheese. Isaac embodies the laughter that endures, joy refined through discipline, mercy balanced by all. The expulsion of Hagar, though painful, is the Tzimtzum of love, the contraction necessary for divine order to take root in the world. Hagar's wandering in the wilderness is the journey of the Shekinah in exile. Driven from the house of Abraham, she becomes the vessel for a different kind of revelation, the compassion that arises even in the desolate places. When her water is spent and her child lies faint beneath the bush, she lifts her voice and weeps. The Zohar says that her tears ascended to Bina, the supernal fountain of mercy, and drew forth an angelic voice that called her name. Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. Here the mystery deepens. Though Ishmael is not the chosen vessel of covenant, the divine ear still bends toward him. For no cry is lost in the economy of the infinite. Even the fallen sparks of rejected vessels are heard and lifted. The well that appeared before Hagar is the hidden Yesod, the fountain of life that flows even in exile. She opens her eyes, and the water of mercy springs forth, a sign that even beyond the boundaries of holiness, the Shekinah sustains the world with secret kindness. In the Lurianic current, this moment reveals that no separation is absolute. The expulsion of Hagar and Ishmael mirrors the primordial shattering of the vessels, yet from the shards arise new worlds. The nations born of Ishmael retain sparks of Abraham's light, scattered through the desert of history, awaiting their own return to unity. The laughter of Isaac and the tears of Hagar are 2 halves of one celestial symphony, the play between joy and sorrow through which the divine reveals itself in multiplicity. Sarah, witnessing the growth of Isaac, saw in him the reflection of Abraham's soul, the perfected balance of right and left, the child of the middle pillar. In his birth, the promise of the covenant became incarnate. In Hagar's wandering, the compassion of the divine extended beyond its chosen boundary. Both movements are necessary. One defines, the other expands. The holy seed is preserved through Isaac, But the world's redemption depends also on the return of the exiled sparks carried in Ishmael's line. Thus, in this story, the laughter of Isaac and the cry of Ishmael meet beneath the same sky. One is the joy of fulfillment, the other the ache of separation, but both rise to the same heaven. The Zohar teaches that the Holy One delights in both sounds, for they are the two breaths that sustain creation, laughter from within the covenant and weeping from beyond it. Together they form the rhythm of tikkun, the slow healing of the divided world. And Abraham, standing between his two sons, becomes the image of the divine heart, stretched between justice and mercy, love and loss. His obedience to Sarah's voice and his compassion for Hagar's plight make him the vessel of Tiferet, mediating between heaven and earth. Through him, the covenantal lineage is purified, and the Shekinah finds her dwelling once more within the tent of promise. Thus the birth of Isaac and the expulsion of Hagar are not opposing events but the two sides of one revelation, the unfolding of divine laughter through the refinement of love. From the joy of Sarah and the tears of Hagar, the mystery of redemption begins its long descent, for laughter must first echo through the wilderness before it becomes the song of the world to come. And it came to pass after these things, that God tested Abraham. The words are simple, yet within them lies one of the greatest mysteries of all creation. For the testing of Abraham is not a mere trial of faith, it is a cosmic reenactment of the divine contraction, the Tzimtzum, in which the infinite conceals himself to reveal love within limitation. The Zohar says, when the Holy One, blessed be He, desired to establish the world in judgment, He tested the righteous. Judgment, then, is the left hand of God, yet it seeks always to be sweetened by the right. Thus Abraham, the embodiment of Chesed, must face the blade of Jevirah, and in his submission, the two arms of the divine will unite again in harmony. The command comes with terrifying clarity. Take now your son, your only one, whom you love, Isaac, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will show you. Each phrase pierces like a blade, stripping Abraham layer by layer of every attachment, until only pure will remains, Ratzon ayin, the supernal desire that mirrors the divine's own self-giving. In the Zohar's vision, this moment is not only an earthly test, but a celestial alignment. The light of Bina descends into Malkut through the path of Jevirah, calling forth the rectification of the world through sacrifice. Abraham rises early, for the soul that loves does not delay. He saddles his donkey, gathers wood, and journeys with Isaac toward Moriah. Each step is a movement up the tree of life, from the world of Asiyah, action toward Atzilut, emanation. For 3 days he travels, 3 being the number of the middle pillar, Chesed, Jevirah, and Tiferet, the triadic heart of the sephirotic body. On the 3rd day he lifts his eyes and sees the place from afar. The Zohar says that this place Makim is one of the names of the divine, for God himself is the place of the world, though the world is not his place. Abraham tells his servants to remain below with the donkey, symbol of the material realm still bound by the shells, clip it. He and Isaac ascend alone, 2 souls walking as one, as Tiferet, the son, returns into Chesed, the father. The wood for the offering is laid upon Isaac, who bears it as the tree of life itself, ascending toward its root. In that ascent, Isaac becomes the archetype of the son of sacrifice, the soul that willingly carries the instrument of its own transformation. Isaac speaks, "My father, behold the fire and the wood. But where is the lamb for the offering?" And Abraham answers, trembling with prophetic knowing, "God will see for himself the lamb, my son." The Hebrew Yireh Lo Haseh can also be read, God will be seen through the lamb. Thus Abraham declares the mystery of substitution, that through the act of sacrifice, the divine will reveal his own image, and death will become the mirror of transcendence. When they reach the appointed mountain, Abraham builds the altar, Mizbeach, from the root Zivak, slaughter, but also from mitzvah, command. The altar is the intersection where obedience and annihilation meet, the point of total surrender. He arranges the wood, binds Isaac, and lays him upon the altar. The Zohar teaches that in this binding, the Akedah, the entire cosmos was suspended. For the son, symbol of Jevirah, was bound by the father, symbol of Chesed, uniting the two forces in perfect equilibrium within the center, Tiferet. All the angels gathered to witness this trembling balance, for if the knife had fallen, the worlds would have been unmade, yet if it had not been raised, the worlds could never be redeemed. At the instant when the blade gleamed in Abraham's hand, the voice of the angel called from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham, do not stretch forth your hand upon the lad." The doubling of his name, says the Zohar, signifies the union of the upper and lower Abraham, the celestial archetype and the earthly reflection, now perfectly aligned. The command is stayed, for the act has already been completed in the supernal realm. In the moment of ultimate renunciation, Abraham became the vessel through which fear and love were reconciled. Then Abraham lifts his eyes and sees a ram caught by its horns in the thicket. The ram is the substitute, the manifestation of Jevurah restrained by Tiferet. Its horns represent the two currents of divine energy, one extending to the right, mercy, one to the left, judgment, now entangled in the branches of the material world. When Abraham offers the ram instead of his son, he enacts the great tikkun of the Akedah. Judgment is transmuted into compassion, and the fire that could destroy becomes the flame that sanctifies. In the Lurianic mystery, the Akedah is the rectification of the Shevurah, the shattering. The willingness to offer Isaac is the repair of the fallen vessels that could not endure divine light. Through Abraham's self-nullification, the light of Bina descends gently into the lower worlds, sweetening the harsh decrees. The mountain of Moriah thus becomes the axis of reconciliation between Din and Rachumim, judgment and mercy. Upon that mountain, the divine name Yhvh is revealed, the Lord will be seen, for in the moment when man ceases to see only with the eyes of desire, the infinite becomes visible through surrender. The angels wept, says the Zohar, for the fire of heaven that should have consumed Isaac now burned within them as awe. Isaac himself was transformed. Though spared in flesh, his soul ascended and returned, passing through death and back into life. Thus he became the first resurrected one, a living embodiment of Bina's womb, judgment redeemed through compassion. The ashes of the ram, scattered upon the altar, became seeds of mercy planted across the generations. Every time Israel prays for forgiveness, these ashes rise again as fragrance before the throne, recalling Abraham's obedience and Isaac's silence. Abraham descends from the mountain changed, no longer merely the man of cheese but the patriarch of harmony. His heart has passed through the furnace of Jevurah and emerged as Tiferet, beauty born of balanced opposites. From that day, the covenant no longer dwelt only in his flesh but in his consciousness. The Zohar calls the state ayin, supernal knowing, the awareness that all dualities, love and fear, joy and sorrow, are faces of the same divine unity. Thus the binding of Isaac is not a story of cruelty but of convergence. It reveals that the true offering demanded of the soul is its own will, that the highest act of love is the surrender of attachment, and that God's command "do not slay" is the revelation that He desires life, not death, but life transfigured by obedience. In this mystery, the mountain of Moriah becomes the navel of the world, the place where heaven kisses earth. From that height, Abraham glimpses the distant generations, the temple, the sacrifices, the prayers, and finally the fire that will once again descend not to consume, but to illumine. The Akedah is thus the eternal axis of redemption, the wound that becomes a window, the fear that becomes song, and the mountain where, in every age, the heart of creation learns again to bow and to see. After the fire upon Mount Moriah had been extinguished, and the ram's smoke rose to heaven, Abraham returned down the mountain bearing within him a silence deeper than words. The Akedah had purified his lineage. Isaac, the son of laughter, had become the vessel of awe. Yet the work of creation was not yet complete, for the Shekinah, the feminine aspect of the divine, must find her counterpart within the world below. Without union, the channels of blessing remain incomplete. Thus, when Sarah died and Abraham grew old, the Torah tells us, the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. In the Zohar, all things Bikul means Malkut, the vessel of completion that joins heaven and earth. But Abraham's blessing was not whole until the feminine found her place beside his son. Abraham called his servant, Eliezer of Damascus, and sent him to seek a bride for Isaac. The sages say that Eliezer's name means God is my help, and the Zohar identifies him with the angelic emissary of Netzach, the victory of divine persistence that fulfills the divine plan through human devotion. Abraham makes him swear by placing his hand under his thigh, the sign of the Brit, the covenant. For this quest is not mere marriage, but the continuation of the covenant through union, the joining of the right and left currents of the tree into harmony within the center. Eliezer journeys with 10 camels laden with treasures, the 10 sefirot in motion, carrying the hidden riches of the patriarch's soul into the outer world. He arrives at a well, for every meeting of lovers in scripture occurs by water, the symbol of Yesod, the spring through which divine influx enters Malkut. He prays, "Let it be that the maiden to whom I shall say, 'Let down your pitcher that I may drink,' and she shall say, 'Drink, and I will give your camels drink also,' be the one you have appointed." His prayer is not only for a sign but for discernment of essence. He seeks the soul whose kindness flows not by command but by nature. Before he finishes speaking, Rebecca appears, radiant and pure, carrying her jar upon her shoulder. The Zohar says that her jar is the vessel of Malkut, and her shoulder is the pillar of Jevurah supporting the flow of mercy. She moves swiftly, for in her runs the current of divine eagerness to fulfill love's design. When she draws water for Eliezer and for all his camels, she enacts the union of Chesed and Malkut, the overflowing kindness that restores balance to the worlds. In that gesture, the Shekinah herself bends down to water the thirsty realms. Eliezer, astonished, places a golden ring upon her nose and bracelets upon her wrists, symbols of adornment that correspond to Bina and Malkut. The ring for the breath of insight that enters the nostrils, the bracelets for the channels of blessing that flow through the arms of the divine feminine. He asks her lineage, and she replies that she is of the house of Nahor, Abraham's kin, the hidden confirmation that the feminine and masculine streams once separated in primordial Adam are now ready to rejoin. That night in Laban's house, Eliezer retells his story. The Zohar remarks that his recounting is longer than the original, for the telling itself completes the act. Speech, when imbued with faith, transforms intention into manifestation. Each retelling of a divine act recreates it. Each repetition draws the unseen into the seen. Thus, when Rebecca's family consents, the word itself seals the union in the upper worlds. Before dawn, Eliezer asks to depart. Rebecca, hearing, says simply, "I will go." Her words carry the tone of the Shekinah consenting to descend, to leave her father's house, the realm of concealment, and join her beloved in the land of Canaan, the land of revelation. Her maidens accompany her, for when Malkut ascends or descends, she is always surrounded by her retinue of angelic sparks, the souls that accompany the journey of divine reunion. As she rides upon the camel, the text says that she lifted her eyes and saw Isaac walking in the field at evening. The Zohar teaches that Isaac was at that moment meditating in prayer, for he embodied Jevurah sweetened by Tiferet, and evening is the time of that balance, the merging of day's mercy with night's awe. Rebecca sees him across the field, the distance between upper and lower worlds bridged by gaze, and she veils herself, signifying the modesty of Malkut before Tiferet, the concealment that allows true revelation. Isaac brings her into his mother Sarah's tent. The tent, in the mystical sense, is the reconstituted tabernacle of the Shekinah. The Midrash says that the light that once burned in Sarah's tent, extinguished at her death, flared again when Rebecca entered. The Zohar explains, the light of Bina had once more descended into Malkut. The feminine channel was reopened. Isaac loved her, and he was comforted after his mother's death, for the divine feminine, lost at the fall, had now re-entered the world through their union. In this sacred marriage, the cosmic polarity is healed. Abraham's Chesed flows through Isaac's Jevurah, and Rebecca becomes the mirror that receives and reflects it. The wells of Abraham are reopened by Isaac's hands, a sign that through love, the ancient channels of blessing are restored. Their union gives birth not only to children but to the continuity of divine embodiment, for from their bond will emerge Jacob, the image of the full tree, Israel himself. In Lurianic language, this marriage signifies the zivug of Zir Anpin and Nukva, the union of the small face, the masculine configuration of the sefirot, with the feminine presence. Every act of love in the world echoes this cosmic embrace. Isaac and Rebecca, in their purity, become the archetype of that celestial union. Their silence together is the silence of the spheres turning in harmony, the stillness of divine breath between the worlds. Thus the story of Isaac and Rebecca is the story of providence concealed within motion, of heaven guiding the footsteps of earth until the two meet at the well. It is the mystery of encounter, that what seems like chance is the choreography of the infinite. When kindness meets readiness, when prayer meets response, the Shekinah descends, and the world is renewed. And so the tent of Sarah becomes again the dwelling of the presence, the lamp burns unceasingly, and the laughter of Isaac, refined by awe, becomes the gentle joy of union fulfilled. The divine romance that began in Eden takes a new form, the rejoining of the scattered halves of Adam and Eve within the lineage of covenant. From their love, the world begins again to heal. After the silence of Isaac's union with Rebekah came a new barrenness. For 20 years the womb of the matriarch remained closed, and the Torah tells us that Isaac prayed opposite her, Lenik Ishto. The Zohar says that opposite here means face to face, as Zir Anpin turns toward the Shekinah in longing. Their prayers intertwined like two currents seeking to open a sealed gate. The heavens were stirred, and the Lord was entreated of him, meaning the masculine channel above was aroused, and the womb of the world responded. Rebekah conceived, but the pregnancy was turbulent. The children struggled within her. When she passed by the doors of the academies of Torah, one pressed to emerge. When she passed the gates of idolatry, the other leapt. Terrified, she cried out, "If so, why am I thus?" and went to inquire of the Lord. The Zohar teaches that she entered the secret of Bina, for inquiry itself is ascent, the soul returning to the root of understanding. There she was told, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 manner of peoples shall be separated from your bowels. The one people shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. In this oracle lies the pattern of creation itself, for the world begins with opposition, tohu and tikkun, chaos and repair. Esau and Jacob are not merely brothers, they are the archetypes of these cosmic principles. Esau is the power of raw light, uncontained, the red blaze of Jevurah, without balance, the realm of the primordial kings who reigned and died before the rectified world emerged. Jacob is the vessel that receives and orders the light, the harmony of Tiferet that restores what was broken. Thus within Rebekah's womb plays out the echo of the shattering of the vessels, Sheveret HaKelim, and the struggle for integration begins anew in flesh and blood. When the time comes, the first emerges red and hairy, like a garment of the earth, Esau, the shell that covers the spark. His name from Asu, made, complete, alludes to the illusion of fullness that precedes true formation. After him comes Jacob, his hand grasping Esau's heel. The Zohar says that the heel, Akev, is the lowest point of Malkut, the world of manifestation. Jacob's hand, the hand of Tiferet, reaching to the heel symbolizes the descent of holiness into the realm of matter, the reclaiming of light from the husks. Jacob's very name, Yaakov, conceals both Ekev, heel, and Kav, the measuring line of divine light. He is the line that penetrates the chaos, bringing order to the depths. As the twins grow, their natures diverge. Esau becomes a man of the field, the outer world of hunting, action, and blood. Jacob dwells in tents, the inner realm of contemplation and study. Yet both are necessary for the full unfolding of the divine image, the outward force that engages the world, and the inward force that refines it. But when the balance is lost, when the vessel rules without the light or the light floods without measure, exile and conflict arise. Isaac loves Esau, for he recognizes in him the spark of Jevurah that mirrors his own essence. Rebekah loves Jacob, for she senses the gentler rhythm of mercy that flows from her own root in Bina. The house becomes the stage upon which Chesed and Jevurah wrestle for mastery, and through their tension, the world advances toward rectification. For every generation must reweave the balance between the outer and inner, the deed and the word, the hand and the heart. In the hidden chambers of heaven, the angels whisper that the struggle of these twins is the struggle between the side of holiness, Sitra di Kedisha, and the side of separation, Sitra Akra. Yet the wise know that both rise from the same source, for without darkness, light would have no contrast. Without resistance, wool would have no strength. Esau's redness is not evil in itself but the overflow of divine intensity, the unfiltered power of Jevurah before it is tempered. Jacob's task is not to destroy it but to redeem it, to draw out the sparks imprisoned in that wildness. When Esau sells his birthright for the red stew, the Zohar says it is not mere hunger, but the soul's surrender of its spiritual inheritance to material immediacy. The red lentils reflect his own color, the fire that devours itself. Jacob, by contrast, acts as the rectifier of the birthright, gathering the scattered sparks back into the vessel of purpose. He becomes the one who knows how to transform appetite into offering, struggle into blessing. In Lurianic language, Esau corresponds to the olam ha-tohu, the world of chaos, where the lights were many and the vessels few. Jacob corresponds to the olam ha-tikkun, the world of rectification, where the sefirot harmonize in mutual Containment. The conflict between them is therefore not merely familial but cosmic, the ongoing process by which divine energy becomes balanced within creation. Each soul experiences this struggle within, the Esau nature that burns to act and the Jacob nature that seeks to understand. Redemption comes when the two are reconciled, when passion serves wisdom and wisdom enlivens passion. Rebekah, in her wisdom, perceives this mystery before her husband does. She knows that Jacob must bear the covenant forward, for he alone can sustain the light without shattering. Her insight is the echo of the supernal Ima Ilah, who knows the proper arrangement of the sefirot and guides the flow unseen. Thus the story of Jacob and Esau is not a tale of rivalry but of divine evolution. From their struggle emerges the line of Israel, which will eventually embrace both aspects, the disciplined fervor of Esau redeemed within the compassionate heart of Jacob. For in the end, says the Zohar, Esau will be transformed and enter the side of holiness, when the sparks that fell in his dominion are finally lifted through love. So within every person, twin forces wrestle in the womb of the soul. When the inner Jacob holds fast to the heel of Esau, not to overthrow but to redeem, the world itself moves closer to perfection. This is the secret of the verse, 2 nations are in your womb, for heaven and earth, light and vessel, right and left, are destined not for endless strife but for sacred union. And the Shekinah waits within that balance, the mother who once trembled with pain now rejoicing that her children, reconciled at last, may dwell together in peace. Night falls upon the traveler. Jacob departs from Beersheba, leaving the house of his father, the domain of Chesed, and journeys toward Haran, the realm of the outer world, where the sparks of holiness are scattered. As he walks, the sun sets suddenly. The sages say that God hastened the sunset so that Jacob would be forced to rest in dream in a sacred place. The Zohar reveals that this place is none other than the navel of the world, the site of Mount Moriah, where Adam was formed, where Isaac was bound, and where the Shekinah abides in concealment. Jacob gathers stones for a pillow, and the stones begin to argue, each desiring to support the righteous one's head. At last they fuse into one, a single stone, symbol of Yesod, the unifying foundation through which multiplicity becomes one vessel. Then Jacob lays down to sleep, and the earth rises toward him. The dust of that place is radiant, for it still remembers the footsteps of the first Adam. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder stood upon the earth, and its head reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending upon it. The Zohar teaches that this ladder is the tree of life itself, the axis of the sefirot from Malkut below to Keter above. Its base stands in the realm of action, its summit in the unnameable light, and the rungs between are the stages of the soul's ascent through consciousness. The angels who ascend are the souls of the righteous and the forces of prayer, rising with human devotion from below. Those who descend are the streams of blessing returning from above, for no ascent remains unanswered. The rhythm of the ladder, ascent and descent, desire and response, is the very pulse of creation. It is the breathing of the divine through the nostrils of the world. Jacob's vision opens the inner architecture of existence. The world is not cut off from heaven, nor is heaven aloof from earth. They are bound by this invisible column of light, the Sulam, whose numerical value equals Sinai, for revelation is not a singular moment in history but a continual transmission between realms. Every prayer, every act of love or justice, places a foot upon one rung. Every descent of compassion from above is the touch of the upper hand meeting the lower. At the top of the ladder, Jacob sees the Lord standing upon it, or, as another reading says, standing above him. The Zohar unites these two meanings. The divine stands both above and within, transcendent and immanent. The infinite is not beyond the ladder but fills it entirely, as light fills glass without displacing it. This is the mystery of Keter within Malkut, the crown that rests within the kingdom. The voice speaks, I am YHVH, the God of Abraham your father and the God of Isaac. The land upon which you lie, I will give it to you and to your seed. The sages say that the Holy One folded the entire land of Israel beneath Jacob, so that the promise was not only of territory, but of integration, heaven and earth compressed into the soul of one man. In Lurianic language, this is the contraction of universes into a single point of consciousness, the seed from which redemption will unfold. Jacob awakens trembling and cries, surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not. His words reveal the essence of mystical realization, that holiness pervades even the most ordinary ground. The place of sleep becomes the place of revelation. Awareness itself is the ladder. When the soul awakens, the entire world becomes the temple. He adds, "How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven." The Zohar teaches that the house of God refers to Malkut, the dwelling of the Shekinah, and the gate of heaven is Yesod, the channel through which divine energy flows downward. Jacob perceives the architecture of the spiritual cosmos, the interlinking of sefirot as a temple not built by hands. He rises early and takes the stone that had lain beneath his head and sets it as a pillar, pouring oil upon its top. This act mirrors the anointing of the Yesod by the light of Chakma, the joining of wisdom and foundation. The oil Kama, symbol of the supernal light that flows smoothly without break, sanctifies the stone, transforming it into a conduit of blessing. Jacob names the place Bet-El, the house of God, for he has established the connection between heaven and earth through his consciousness. In Lurianic terms, Jacob's dream marks the awakening of Zir Anpin, the configuration of the 6 emotional sefirot that mediates between the higher intellects and the feminine presence below. His vow, "If God will be with me and guard me on this way," expresses the mutual covenant between human will and divine providence, the mirroring of above and below. When he promises to tithe all that he receives, he commits to returning the lower 10th Malkut back into unity, the secret of raising the fallen sparks. The latter, then, is not a distant vision but the structure of every soul's journey. Each thought, each act of compassion, each breath of prayer becomes a step. The angels are not external beings alone, but the energies we generate through devotion, ascending and descending in the circuits of light. In sleep, Jacob glimpsed the inner mechanics of the cosmos. Upon waking, he understood that his path, the exile to Haran, the struggle with Laban, the founding of Israel, would itself be the climbing of that ladder, rung by rung, until heaven and earth were perfectly joined. Thus, in the stillness of night, the patriarch beheld the entire mystery of the Sefirot. Malkut is the stone beneath his head, Yesod is the pillar anointed with oil, Tiferet as the ladder's midpoint, Bina as the hidden understanding of ascent, and Keter as the infinite presence above and within. His dream is the archetype of theurgy, the realization that the world is sustained by the constant exchange between divine light and human awakening. And so Jacob, the solitary wanderer, becomes the mystic of vision. His sleep opens the gates of heaven, his awareness anchors them in the dust. From that night onward, every dream of ascent, every soul that strives upward, retraces his steps along the radiant ladder. For the house of God he named still stands within the heart of the world, and every awakening soul rebuilds its stones anew. Jacob, the dreamer of the ladder, continues his journey eastward, into exile, into the field of labor, into the world of multiplicity, where the hidden lights are clothed in matter. He comes to a well covered with a heavy stone, around which shepherds wait idly, saying that they cannot water their flocks until all are gathered and the stone is rolled away. In the Zohar, this well is the source of the Shekinah, and the stone upon its mouth is the barrier that conceals the flow of divine waters from the lower worlds. The shepherds are the souls of the righteous in exile, waiting for the one who will have the strength to roll away the obstacle and restore the flow of blessing. Then Rachel approaches, radiant as the morning, tending her father's sheep. Her name, meaning you, alludes to the feminine aspect of Malkut, pure yet bound within the field of Laban, whose name signifies whiteness without warmth, the cold brilliance of intellect detached from love. When Jacob sees her, the hidden fire in his heart bursts forth. He rolls the stone from the well and waters the flock, the act of Yesod opening the channel toward Malkut, restoring the flow of living water to the world below. He weeps upon her neck, for he sees by the Spirit that she will not be his alone, but shared with her sister. The Zohar reveals that Leah and Rachel are not merely women, but two manifestations of the divine feminine. Leah, the upper Shekinah, concealed in Bina, and Rachel, the lower Shekinah, revealed in the world. Leah's eyes are tender, for she gazes constantly into the supernal light. Rachel is beautiful of form and appearance, for she embodies the harmonized reflection of that light in creation. Jacob serves 7 years for Rachel, which pass for him as a few days because of his love. The 7 years correspond to the 7 lower Sefirot, the time required for Zir Anpin, the microcosmic configuration of the masculine, to perfect itself in preparation for union. But when the night of the wedding comes, Laban deceives him, substituting Leah for Rachel. In the hidden meaning, Leah, the upper world, precedes Rachel, the lower. One cannot grasp the revealed before first passing through the concealed. The soul must marry the inward before it can unite with the outward. When Jacob discovers the deception, he protests but accepts, agreeing to serve 7 more years for Rachel. Thus the patriarch becomes the servant of both dimensions of the Shekinah. His life becomes a double service, contemplation and action, prayer and deed, the hidden and the manifest. The Zohar says that Leah gives birth easily, for the hidden world is fecund with spiritual abundance, while Rachel remains barren, for manifestation is constricted until the inner is fulfilled. Leah bears Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, the 4 pillars of the world, corresponding to Chesed, Jevurah, Tiferet, and Malkut. Each name conceals a stage of divine emanation. Reuben, see, a son is the awakening of perception, the eye of Chesed opening to recognize the divine presence. Simeon, hearing, is the deepening of response, the ear of Jevurah attuned to discernment. Levi, joining, is the union of opposites, the harmony of Tiferet joining right and left. Judah, thanksgiving, is the final offering, the praise that opens Malkut to receive light. Meanwhile Rachel, yearning for children, gives her handmaid Bilhah to Jacob, who bears Dan and Naphtali, symbols of the lower worlds participating in the process of tikkun. Leah responds with Zilpah, who bears Gad and Asher. Through these maidservants, the unredeemed aspects of creation, the fragmented shells of matter, are drawn into holiness. In the Lurianic vision, this is the elevation of the fallen sparks, the redemption of the outer shells through the compassion of the inner worlds. At last, after years of longing and prayer, God remembered Rachel, meaning that Malkut was remembered in the supernal mind. The channel of abundance opened, and she bore Joseph, the embodiment of Yesod, the foundation through which divine influx flows. His birth completes the pattern of Jacob's work, the full restoration of the sephirotic body, the reconciliation of upper and lower. In this great mystery, Leah and Rachel reveal the 2 aspects of devotion. Leah's love is the silent, inward contemplation that communes with the unseen. Rachel's is the bright, outward expression that sanctifies the visible world. The mystic must marry both. First Leah, the inner world of prayer and hidden tears, then Rachel, the outer world of love and action. Without Leah, Rachel is barren. Without Rachel, Leah remains unseen. Jacob's long service in Laban's house represents the soul's labor within the material realm, where divine intention is obscured by deception. Laban changes his wages 10 times, the distortion of the 10 sefirot under the hand of ego. Yet Jacob remains faithful, rectifying each distortion through perseverance. His flocks multiply with strange markings, for the divine pattern manifests even in the spotted and imperfect. The Zohar teaches that Jacob's selective breeding of the sheep is a form of mystical art. By placing rods before them as they drink, he arranges the flow of the lights through the channels of Yesod into Malkut, restoring balance to the worlds. In the hidden language of the sages, Jacob's marriages are the archetype of the union of Zir Anpin and the 2 partsufim of the feminine, Leah and Rachel. The upper Shekinah, Leah, represents the concealed life of the mind and soul, the realm of prayer, meditation, and inner vision. The lower Shekinah, Rachel, is the embodied presence, the realm of speech, deed, and sanctification of the physical. Their alternation in Jacob's bedchamber, Leah by night, Rachel by day, symbolizes the rhythmic interchange between inner contemplation and outer expression. Night is the hidden labor of the mystic, day is its revelation in the world. At the end of his years of service, Jacob's household is vast and luminous, a microcosm of the divine order. The wells have been opened, the flocks increased, and the 2 wives, inward and outward devotion, have given birth to the 12 tribes, the full manifestation of divine order within humanity. Yet Jacob's exile is not yet over. The struggle with Laban continues, as the forces of concealment always resist liberation. Still, through his marriages, the cosmic architecture is complete. The masculine current of Zir Anpin united with both aspects of the Shekinah, ensuring the continual circulation of divine light from Keter to Malkut. Thus, the tale of Jacob, Leah, and Rachel is not a human love story alone, but the myth of the universe. The veiled and the unveiled, the hidden and the manifest, are wedded through the devotion of the righteous. Every soul that loves both the inner silence and the outer beauty of the world reenacts Jacob's union, rolling away the stone from the well of life, letting the waters flow again into creation. Night once again descends upon Jacob, and he stands at the ford of the Jabbok alone. The Zohar lingers upon the word levato, alone, saying that he was left with the alone one. For in that hour, all his possessions, wives, and children have crossed the stream, and he remains as pure consciousness, stripped of the garments of the world. This solitude is not abandonment but the tzimtzum of the soul, the contraction of all outward identity to make room for revelation. From the darkness emerges a presence, a man, yet not a man, an angel, yet not entirely other. The sages call him the guardian spirit of Esau, but the mystics know that this being is the reflection of Jacob himself, his shadow and his mirror, the embodiment of unintegrated strength, the residue of Jevira that has not yet bowed to harmony. In Lurianic teaching, he is the spirit of Tohu, the unrectified light that still demands acknowledgement before it can be redeemed. They wrestle until the breaking of the day. The Zohar teaches that this struggle is not one of violence alone, but of union through opposition, the embrace of two forces seeking balance. Jacob's arms encircle the angel as prayer encircles the hidden name. Each holds the other, refusing to release until the dawn reveals the truth of both. The night is long, for the soul must wrestle through every layer of concealment, every remnant of pride and fear, before it can receive the new name. The place of their struggle, the ford of the Jabbok, shares its letters with Jacob's own name, rearranged. This is not coincidence but revelation, the place where Yaakov, the heel grasper, becomes Jabbok, the crossing stream. The crossing represents the transformation of identity through encounter, the movement from the lower to the higher self, from manipulation to surrender. As the fight continues, the angel touches Jacob's thigh and dislocates it, wounding the point of his strength. In the hidden meaning, this blow falls upon Yesod, the foundation, the seat of generative power. The mystics teach that every soul that ascends must first be wounded, the vessel must be cracked so that light may enter. The limp that Jacob carries thereafter is not a mark of defeat but the sign of initiation, the humility that allows divine flow without shattering. The wound becomes the opening through which grace enters the world. When the dawn begins to break, the angel begs release. Let me go, for the day is breaking. Jacob, panting and bloodied, clings to him and says, I will not let you go until you bless me. In these words lies the secret of tikkun, the insistence that every darkness must yield its light, every struggle its blessing. Jacob does not reject the adversary but demands its transformation. This is the work of the righteous, not to banish the shadow, but to redeem it. The angel asks, What is your name? And he answers, Jacob. The reply comes, Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed. The Zohar comments that the name Israel, Yisrael, means the one who rules with God, but also the straightness of Gedayasher, for the crooked heel has become the upright heart. The cunning of Jacob, once needed to survive among deceivers, is now refined into direct vision. The soul that once grasped the heel now gazes upon the face. This renaming is the mystery of the birth of Zir Anpin in the individual, the integration of all emotional sefirot into a single harmonized consciousness. Jacob, the man of tents, becomes Israel, the cosmic archetype. His personal struggle mirrors the universal rectification of the sefirot, Jevira, severity reconciled with cheesed, mercy, Yesod healed of distortion, Tiferet crowned with humility. The dawn that rises upon him is the light of Keter filtering through the veil, the first ray of direct communion. Jacob asks, Tell me, I pray, your name. But the angel replies, Why do you ask my name? And blesses him there. The concealment of the name is itself revelation, for the true name of the angel is the ineffable name within Jacob, the divine self that cannot be spoken. When one attains unity with the higher soul, Neshama, there is no longer I and thou. The struggle dissolves into knowing. The silence of the angel is the silence of Keter, beyond words, beyond duality. As the sun rises, Jacob limps toward the east. The Zohar remarks that the sun rose upon him, not simply upon the world but upon him, for he himself has become the horizon. The light that shines is not external but the radiance of his awakened consciousness. He names the place Peniel, face of God, for he has seen the divine face within the human, and the human within the divine, and his life has been preserved. This vision is the essence of Devakut, the cleaving of the finite to the infinite. From that day forward, the children of Israel do not eat the sinew of the thigh, for it is the mark of the wound sanctified. In every generation when Israel struggles in exile, this law recalls the limp of their ancestor, the reminder that holiness often enters through pain. The covenantal limp is the symbol of endurance through suffering, the secret that weakness becomes strength when illumined by faith. In Lurianic thought, this night at the Jabbok represents the rectification of Jevurah, the harmonization of the fierce divine energies that once threatened to break creation. Jacob's wrestling integrates these forces into the body of holiness. The angel of Esau, representing the power of the left side, is subdued and elevated, his blessing drawn forth and absorbed into the line of Israel. The world of Tohu, through this encounter, is reconciled with the world of Tikkun. Thus, the struggle in the night is not merely Jacob's personal ordeal, but the drama of the universe. Every soul must face its angel, the aspect of the divine that opposes and refines it. Each must wrestle through the long dark until the dawn of understanding reveals the blessing hidden within opposition. And when at last we limp into the light, carrying our wound as our seal, we too receive the new name, Israel, the one who has seen God in the mirror of struggle and has not perished. Jacob's limp, his dawn, his new name, these are the emblems of the mystical path. For the one who has wrestled and been wounded becomes the vessel of compassion. The strength of Jevurah tempered by the tenderness of Chesed becomes the heart of Israel, the bridge between heaven and earth. And every prayer uttered in the darkness of exile carries the echo of that night struggle, ascending the ladder he once dreamed, until the face of God once more looks upon the world through the eyes of a human being. Joseph, son of Jacob, is described in the Torah as Ben Zekunim, the son of old age. The Zohar interprets this not only as the child born in Jacob's later years, but as the child of wisdom distilled, the radiance of Tiferet emerging from the union of the upper and lower realms. He is Yesod, the foundation through which all the divine energies of the patriarchs flow into manifestation. His beauty is the reflection of his father's light, yet his destiny is to carry that light into the depths of exile. From his youth, Joseph dreams, not idle fantasies, but true visions that pierce the veil. His first dream, sheaves of grain stand in the field, and his brother's sheaves bow to his. His second, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars prostrate themselves before him. In the Saharic view, these dreams arise from Yesod's connection to Malchut, revealing the structure of cosmic hierarchy. Joseph is the channel through which the celestial order bends toward fulfillment. The sheaves represent the earthly sparks of holiness, the stars, the supernal forces that will one day acknowledge the light he bears. But the brothers, perceiving only the outer form, are angered. They see in him arrogance, not revelation. They cannot yet discern that their jealousy is part of the divine drama, that through their envy, the hidden providence will unfold. Lurianic Kabbalah teaches that the envy of the brothers mirrors the fragmentation of the primordial vessels. Each sefirot seeks to retain its own light and thus shatters under the pressure of divine intensity. So too, the tribes, each representing a distinct aspect of holiness, resist the unifying power of Joseph, the channel of synthesis. Their betrayal is the echo of that cosmic shattering, Shevet HaKelim. When Jacob sends Joseph to check upon his brothers in Shechem, it is not merely a father's errand but a mission from above, the descent of Yesod into the realm of conflict to gather the scattered sparks. Joseph wanders in the field, and a mysterious man finds him. The Zohar identifies this figure as the angel Gabriel, guiding him into destiny. So the righteous are led unknowingly into their trials, for the soul cannot reach its fulfillment without traversing the shadow. As Joseph approaches, the brothers conspire. Behold, the dreamer comes, let us kill him, and we shall see what becomes of his dreams. The Torah here veils a deeper truth, that divine dreams cannot be slain, they descend instead into concealment. Reuben pleads for his life, and Joseph is thrown into the pit. The pit was empty, there was no water in it. The Zohar comments, no water, meaning no Torah, but serpents and scorpions, symbols of the klippot, the husks that encase holiness in exile. The pit thus becomes the womb of transformation, where divine consciousness is hidden within matter. Joseph's coat, the coat of many colors, is stripped from him. In the mystical sense, this garment represents the external form of the soul, its radiance and favor in the visible world. The stripping of the coat is the removal of the garment of light, so that the essence may enter the darkness unadorned. They dip it in the blood of a goat, the goat of Jevurah, signifying the mingling of severity with mercy in the cosmic process. Jacob, beholding the bloodied coat, weeps for his son and descends into mourning, not knowing that this descent mirrors the Shekinah's own exile with the righteous soul. Sold to the Ishmaelites, then to the Midianites, Joseph begins the long spiral downward, from favored son to slave. Yet in each descent, the divine hand is hidden. The Zohar describes this as the light of Yesod concealed within the darkness of Malkut, the righteous one descending into Egypt, Mitzrayim, the narrow place, to redeem the sparks trapped there since the fall of Adam. Egypt, land of idols and constraints, represents the densest shell of materiality. Joseph's mission is to plant the seed of divine order within that chaos. His dreams, once mocked, now begin to fulfill themselves in paradoxical form. He dreamed of elevation and finds himself cast down. But the descent is itself ascent in disguise, for Lurianic mysticism teaches, Yerida letzorech aliyah. Every descent is for the sake of ascent. The righteous must descend to awaken the dormant light in the depths. Joseph's slavery thus becomes the prelude to his eventual rule, his humiliation the crucible of his crown. Throughout this ordeal, the Shekinah accompanies him. In the house of Potiphar, when temptation arises through Potiphar's wife, the Zohar says that Joseph beholds the image of his father, not a mere memory but the vision of Tiferet appearing to Yesod as the inner face of God. By resisting, he preserves the flow of divine energy untainted, maintaining the covenant of life. This act of purity, though belonging to the next chapter, has its roots here, in the initial stripping of the coat, the test of identity beneath concealment. In the betrayal by his brothers, we see reflected the primordial cosmic story, the breaking of the vessels, the scattering of light, and the exile of the divine feminine. Joseph, as the righteous one, becomes the tzaddik Yesod olam, the pillar that sustains the world, for he carries within him the potential of reunion. His pain is the pain of the Shekinah, his exile, the exile of the divine presence within creation. Yet within that pain glimmers the seed of redemption, for through Joseph's suffering, Egypt will be prepared to receive Israel, and the drama of liberation will unfold. When the Midianites lift Joseph from the pit and sell him for silver, the sages see echoes of another descent. The selling of the soul into the body, the divine spark exchange for the coin of material existence. But the Zohar adds, the pit did not destroy him, for his root remained above. The righteous may be cast into the pit, but their consciousness clings to the ladder that rises from the dust to the crown. The story of Joseph's betrayal is thus the drama of the divine within creation. His dreams are the higher blueprints of tikkun, his sail into Egypt, the enactment of that plan through concealment. The brothers, agents of jealousy and division, become unwitting instruments of restoration. For just as light must be broken to illuminate the many, so must the beloved son be exiled to gather the nations. The bloodied coat returned to Jacob is the image of Malkut mourning the loss of her husband, the righteous Yesod. But beneath the tears lies faith, the certainty that the hidden light will return. Joseph is gone, cries Jacob, yet in his mourning the Shekinah herself weeps, and those tears water the seeds of redemption. Thus, the pit, the coat, the dreams, the silver, all are garments of mystery. Beneath them moves the eternal rhythm of divine descent in return. The soul must often be betrayed by its own brethren, must lose its visible favor, must fall into the pit of forgetfulness, and yet, in that pit it finds the secret of endurance. For Joseph's dream was true, the sheaves and the stars would one day bow, and the hidden light of Yesod would emerge to rule, not in pride, but in service, feeding the world with divine sustenance. This is the mystery of Joseph, that every fall conceals ascent, every betrayal hides the seed of mercy. His story is the cosmic mirror of the Shekinah's exile and the promise of her return. In his tears shines the dawn of redemption, and in his dreams sleeps the world's awakening. Joseph descends into Egypt, Mitzrayim, the narrow place, the constricted world where divine light is most concealed. In Zaharic symbolism, Egypt is the kingdom of the other side, Sitra Akra, the husk that holds divine energy captive. Yet it is precisely there that Yesod, the righteous one, must act, descending into the darkness to draw forth the hidden sparks. Thus, Joseph's exile is not punishment but mission, the secret of divine descent into matter for the sake of rectification, tikkun. In Potiphar's house, Joseph becomes a servant, the tzaddik hidden in bondage. Yet God was with Joseph, and he was a successful man. The Zohar explains, wherever the righteous dwells, the Shekinah dwells with him. The divine presence clings to Yesod, for it is the channel through which she receives sustenance. The house of Potiphar, once ruled by idolatry, is now filled with blessing, a sign that even in exile, holiness radiates from within concealment. But Egypt tests the light that enters it. Potiphar's wife, seeing Joseph's beauty, the reflection of Tiferet within Yesod, becomes entranced. Her desire is not merely lust but a symbolic yearning of the unrectified feminine, the lithic Malkut, to unite with the holy masculine before its time. The Zohar reveals that she perceived in her stars that she was destined to have a child from Joseph, not realizing it would be through her daughter, Aseneth, whom Joseph later marries. Thus, what appears as temptation is in truth a distorted echo of divine union, the shell grasping prematurely for the light. Joseph resists. In the moment of trial, he sees the face of his father, the image of Tiferet, the higher self that gazes from the mirror of conscience. This vision restores alignment. The ladder between Yesod and Tiferet remains unbroken. His flight from her grasp is the victory of covenant over chaos, the triumph of sanctified desire over the enticement of fragmentation. The garment she seizes, the second time Joseph's robe is stripped from him, symbolizes the outer vessel of his holiness, torn away so that his inner integrity might shine forth unadorned. Falsely accused, Joseph is cast into prison, the pit within the pit. The descent deepens, and yet even here God was with him. The Zohar says, the Shekinah followed him into the darkness, as she follows every righteous soul. The prison represents the world of Asaya, the lowest sphere, where consciousness is bound by the illusions of time and fate. Yet within that confinement, the divine light stirs secretly, preparing the reversal. Two servants of Pharaoh, the cupbearer and the baker, are imprisoned with him. They dream, and Joseph interprets. In these two men the mystics see two channels of divine flow. The cupbearer of Chesed, pouring mercy and life, and the baker of Jevurah, shaping judgment and limitation. Their dreams are messages from the upper worlds, refracted through the lens of Egypt's darkness. Joseph, still the dreamer, becomes now the interpreter of dreams, the mediator who reveals how divine meaning hides within the images of sleep. When the cupbearer is restored and Joseph forgotten, the silence of years follows. This forgetting, too, is providence, the period of gestation before the revelation. The Zohar compares it to the Shekinah hidden in exile, the righteous one alone in the depths, sustaining creation through patience. For the dreamer's faith is itself a vessel of light, ripening unseen. Then Pharaoh dreams. The ruler of Egypt, embodiment of ego and cosmic obstruction, receives visions from the divine source, 7 fat cows and 7 lean, 7 full ears and 7 scorched. The dream descends from Bina, understanding, into the realm of Malkut, manifestation, warning of imbalance in the flow of divine abundance. None of Pharaoh's magicians can interpret, for their wisdom belongs to the world of shells. They see forms but not the inner spark. Only Joseph, Yesod, can decode the message, for he is the bridge between the upper and lower worlds. Summoned from the pit, Joseph shaves and changes his garments, the third transformation of clothing, each marking a shift of consciousness. From the rags of slavery to the robes of rulership, the movement of garments traces the unveiling of the soul through its veils. Before Pharaoh, Joseph speaks with humility, "It is not I, God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace." In these words the Zohar hears the secret of Bitul, self-nullification. The true interpreter of divine mysteries effaces his ego, so that the light may pass unimpeded. He explains the dream, 7 years of plenty will be followed by 7 years of famine. The interpretation is not only agricultural but cosmic, abundance and restriction alternating in the rhythm of Chesed and Jevurah. Joseph's counsel to store grain during the years of plenty is the wisdom of Yesod, to channel overflow into vessels, to prepare form for the return of scarcity. He becomes the embodiment of divine providence, the harmonizer of upper and lower forces. Pharaoh, perceiving the Spirit of God within him, raises Joseph to power, from prisoner to viceroy. The Zohar declares, from the depth of darkness rises the light of redemption. Joseph, once sold for silver, now governs the world's wealth. Once bound, he now holds the keys to abundance. His authority is not of dominance but of stewardship. He channels divine sustenance to the nations, mirroring the flow from Yesod to Malkut. His new name, Sophaneth Panich, means the revealer of hidden things. In Lurianic symbolism, this title signifies the restoration of Dot, the inner knowing that unites wisdom and understanding. Joseph becomes the ayin, the higher consciousness through which divine insight enters history. By interpreting Pharaoh's dream, he unveils the dreamer within creation itself, God dreaming through the patterns of time. During the years of plenty, Joseph gathers grain as the sand of the sea, storing abundance beyond measure. The Zohar interprets this as the gathering of holy sparks from the broken vessels, the accumulation of divine potential awaiting the famine of exile. When scarcity arrives, Egypt becomes the center of sustenance and all nations come to Joseph for bread. Thus the tzaddik becomes the axis of the world, Yesod olam, feeding creation with the light he has preserved. Joseph marries Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, the very lineage once associated with temptation. In this union the past is rectified. The unholy desire of Potiphar's wife is transformed into sanctified union. The Zohar celebrates this as the redemption of the feminine, the Shekinah restored to harmony with the righteous one. Their children, Manasseh and Ephraim, embody the dual motion of divine memory. Manasseh, forgetting, symbolizes the release of pain. Ephraim, fruitfulness, the abundance born from exile. Through Joseph's stewardship, Egypt becomes a reflection of the supernal order, a material vessel shaped by divine wisdom. Yet the mystics caution, this order is temporary, for the light cannot remain forever in the land of constraint. Joseph's rise prefigures both the glory and the peril of assimilation, the righteous one reigning in exile, sustaining the world, but longing for home. In Lurianic thought, Joseph's ascent is the midpoint of the cosmic process. The light has descended into the lowest realm, and now begins its return. The dreamer who once saw the stars bowing now becomes their interpreter, and through him the divine plan moves toward fulfillment. His governance is not mere politics but theurgy, the administration of divine flow through human agency. Thus the story of Joseph in Egypt is the story of providence hidden in exile, of light veiled in shadow. Every humiliation becomes a vessel for elevation, every pit conceals a throne. The dream that began in Canaan finds its meaning in Egypt, proving that God speaks even through the tongue of Pharaoh, even through the famine of the world. The Zohar concludes that Joseph's soul is the archetype of the Redeemer, the one who brings nourishment to the hungry and meaning to the dream. His descent into Egypt is the descent of divine wisdom into creation, his rise, the promise of ultimate restoration. In him, heaven interprets earth, and earth fulfills heaven's dream. Years have passed. The famine has devoured the lands, and Jacob's sons, hungry and worn, journey to Egypt seeking grain. They bow before the governor of the land, not knowing that he is the brother they betrayed. The Zohar calls this moment Gilu HaAtzilut B'Asiyah, the revelation of Atzilut, divine world. Within Asiyah, the world of action. In this meeting, heaven and earth gaze upon each other through human faces. Joseph, now arrayed in the garments of Egyptian power, conceals his identity. His speech, his bearing, his throne, all serve as veils for the divine drama unfolding. Yet within him burns the same light that once dreamed in Canaan. He recognizes his brothers, but they do not recognize him, for the outer form has changed, while the inner essence remains. This is the mystery of divine concealment, that God may stand before the world and not be seen, veiled in the garments of history. When Joseph tests his brothers, accusing, imprisoning, and demanding Benjamin's presence, the Zohar perceives not vengeance but the cosmic process of rectification, tikkun. The tribes, who once acted in envy and division, must face their own brokenness. Their trial is the mirror of their past. They must protect the younger brother whom once they scorned. In doing so, they repair the fracture in the collective soul of Israel. Benjamin's arrival completes the circle, for he represents Malkut, the Shekinah, the lost feminine presence. When Joseph sees him, he can no longer restrain his tears. And Joseph hurried out, for his compassion grew warm toward his brother. The tears that flow are not only his, they are the tears of the Shekinah, weeping through him, for the moment of reunion is near. At last, the brothers stand before him again, terrified and confused. Joseph, unable to hold back the divine tide within him, sends all others away. The Torah says, "He cried aloud, and the Egyptians heard, and the house of Pharaoh heard." The Zohar comments, "The cry of the righteous pierces all worlds. It rises from Malkut through Yesod to Tiferet, shaking the supernal palaces." Joseph's weeping opens the channels of compassion that have been sealed since his betrayal. Then he speaks, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" These words, simple and human, are also the thunder of revelation. The Zohar explains that Ein Yosef, I am Joseph, is parallel to Ani YHVH, I am the Lord. Both are declarations of presence unveiled. In that instant, the hidden providence reveals itself. What was thought human becomes divine. What was exile becomes redemption. The brothers are stunned, speechless. Their shame burns like fire, for they now perceive that their cruelty served the plan of heaven. Joseph calms them. Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves, for God sent me before you to preserve life. This is the secret of Hashgacha Elayana, the supreme providence in which even betrayal becomes instrument of mercy. In his words, Joseph transforms guilt into insight, vengeance into compassion. The divine light of Tiferet, harmony and beauty, radiates through forgiveness. He continues, God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. The mystics read this as prophecy. Joseph's descent into Egypt plants the seed of future redemption. The tzaddik descends to sustain the world in famine, just as the Shekinah descends into exile to gather the sparks. In this way, the story of Joseph is the prototype of every messianic descent, the righteous one who suffers in silence to bring salvation. When Joseph embraces Benjamin, both weep upon each other's necks. The Zohar interprets this symbolically. Each weeps for the two temples that will one day stand in Benjamin's territory and fall in exile. Thus, even in joy, the future sorrow is known. Yet this sorrow itself is sacred, for in the mystic cycle, destruction becomes the preparation for higher restoration. The tears of Joseph and Benjamin mingle as the waters of Chesed and Jevurah, mercy and judgment reconciled. Then Joseph falls upon the necks of all his brothers and weeps, and only after this do they speak to him. The order is essential. Tears precede speech, emotion precedes explanation. The Zohar teaches that tears are the highest prayer, for they come from the hidden spring of Bina, the mother of compassion. Through weeping, the Shekinah purifies the channels of creation, and reconciliation flows. Joseph sends for Jacob, and the reunion of father and son becomes the meeting of Tiferet and Bina, the harmonized beauty of the child restored to the womb of understanding. When Jacob hears that Joseph still lives, his spirit revived. The Hebrew says, Vadachi Ruach Yaakov, the spirit of Jacob lived again, the same phrase used for the resurrection of souls. The Zohar explains that this moment revives not only Jacob, but the entire divine configuration. The light of Tiferet rises, the channels reopen, and the Shekinah rejoices. As Jacob journeys to Egypt, God appears to him at Beersheba and says, Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will go down with you, and I will surely bring you up again. This is the Shekinah speaking through the voice of the Infinite, the promise that divine presence will accompany Israel into exile. The descent of Jacob into Egypt marks the beginning of national exile, yet it is suffused with the certainty of return. Thus, what seems loss is already redemption in seed. In Lurianic Kabbalah, this reunion signifies the rectification of Yesod and Malkut. Joseph, Yesod, reunites with his brothers, the tribes, aspects of Malkut, healing the breach between the masculine channel and the collective vessel. The flow of divine energy, long blocked by sin and jealousy, is restored. In this restoration lies the secret of universal mercy, the transformation of judgment into compassion. Joseph's forgiveness exemplifies tikkun olam in its purest form, the reweaving of broken relationships into a garment of unity. His recognition that God sent me before you reflects the perception of Ein Od Milvado, there is none besides him. Every event, even cruelty, is a thread in the tapestry of divine wisdom. When this awareness fills the heart, all bitterness dissolves. Thus Joseph's revelation is more than a family reconciliation, it is a cosmic epiphany. The hidden order of creation, the mystery of divine concealment and disclosure, is enacted in human emotion. The brother's sin becomes the instrument of salvation, the pit becomes the gateway to the palace, the dream becomes history. The Zohar says that when Joseph cried, his tears fell upon the Shekinah and washed away her exile. Each tear is a drop of light that repairs the world. When forgiveness flows between brothers, the divine name is complete. When love replaces envy, the worlds align. In this way, Joseph's story concludes the Genesis cycle of descent in reconciliation. The dreamer becomes the revealer, the exile becomes the redeemer. Through him, the line of Israel is preserved, and the hidden light of God shines openly through the face of mercy. For in the words Ein Yosef, I am Joseph, the mystics hear the whisper of the final redemption, the moment when the concealed will say Ani Yhvh, and all creation will recognize that every dream, every pit, every tear was the hidden face of divine love. The time drew near for Israel to depart the world, and the Torah says, "And Jacob called unto his sons, and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the latter days." The Zohar begins here, "Come and see, when the righteous one prepares to depart, all the worlds tremble." For Jacob, who is Tiferet, the harmony of all the sefirot, becomes the channel through which the supernal light of Atzilut flows into the structure of Israel below. His final act is not death, but distribution, the emanation of blessing that will shake the tribes as the 12 constellations of holiness. Jacob gathers his sons, saying Hisfu, gather yourselves. The Zohar notes that this word hints at a Sifa Elayana, the gathering of lights, a moment when the dispersed sparks of the patriarchal mysteries, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob converge. Abraham's Chesed, Isaac's Jevurah, and Jacob's Tiferet blend into one river, pouring into 12 channels, the sons who will become the tribes of Israel. The scene opens in both tenderness and awe. Jacob's eyes are dim, yet his inner vision is vast. His physical weakness mirrors the fading of outer light, but his spirit burns with the brilliance of Bina, the understanding that beholds the totality. The Shekinah hovers over his bed, the divine presence that attends the righteous at the threshold between worlds. When Jacob begins to speak, each blessing becomes a mystical map. Reuben, the firstborn, is the image of unstable waters, representing Chesed without containment. His impetuosity symbolizes divine overflow before form, a mercy unbounded that must be tempered. Simeon and Levi are joined in fierce zeal, channels of Jevurah, whose violence requires sublimation into sacred service, for from Levi will come the priests, those who transform fire into worship. Judah, whose name encloses the letters of the divine name, YHVH with an added dalet from Malkut, receives the scepter, the mystery of Tiferet united with Malkut, kingship sanctified. The Lion of Judah becomes the image of messianic strength, the balanced force that rules through compassion. The Zohar says that Judah's blessing conceals the prophecy of the King Messiah, the final restoration of harmony when all tribes will again bow as one. Zebulun and Issachar form the twin pillars of commerce and study, outer and inner worlds. Zebulun's ships represent the circulation of divine bounty in the material realm, while Issachar's tents symbolize the contemplative depth of Torah. Together they express the unity of action and understanding, Asiyah and Bariah, both sustained by the light of Atzilut flowing from their father's words. Dan is judgment, Din, whose name hides within his. The serpent on the path recalls the secret of Nachash Elayan, the serpent of wisdom who guards the gates of Eden. In the corrected world, this force becomes discernment, the ability to distinguish between holy and unholy without falling into duality. Gad, Asher, Naphtali, each receives the measure of blessing fitting his spiritual root. The Zohar reads these names as letters in the cosmic name, 12 permutations of the divine. Each tribe, as it enters the world, manifests a unique light within the body of Israel, and Jacob, like a divine artisan, places each gem into its ordained setting. When he turns to Joseph, the flow of blessing intensifies. For Joseph is Yesod, the righteous foundation of the world, the channel through which the upper light descends to nourish all, a fruitful bough by a spring. Jacob says, whose branches run over the wall. The Zohar interprets, the spring is Bina, the upper mother, and the wall is Malkut, the world of manifestation. Joseph's light bridges them, carrying the Shekinah from concealment to revelation. The arrows of envy wounded him, but his bow remained firm, for his power came not from himself, but from the mighty one of Jacob, Abir Yaakov, the supernal strength that dwells in Yesod. Benjamin is the final spark, the Shekinah herself, the beloved child who completes the pattern. Benjamin is a ravening wolf, says Jacob, but the Zohar explains that this wolf does not devour, but consumes the offerings of dawn and dusk, the continual devotion that unites day and night. His portion contains Jerusalem and the temple, the meeting point of heaven and earth. Thus each blessing is a revelation of soul root, a transmission from one world to another. Through them, Jacob distributes the 10 sefirot into 12 channels, fixing them in the structure of the tribes. The act itself mirrors the creation of the cosmos, for as God divided the waters of above and below, Jacob divides his light into 12 reflections. When he finishes, the Torah says, "And Jacob gathered up his feet into the bed, and was gathered unto his people." The Zohar lingers on this. The words "gathered up his feet" signify that he elevated the final sefirot, Malkut, to unite with the upper worlds. His death is not an ending but an ascent, the return of harmony to its source. The Shekinah receives him as bride receives the groom, and the voice of the patriarchs echoes in heaven. In this moment, the Zohar teaches, Jacob becomes Israel in truth, not a man, but the archetype of the collective soul of Israel, the body of divine light that extends through all generations. His blessings are the DNA of destiny, the pattern through which the divine dream continues to unfold in the world. Thus ends Genesis, not in death, but in transmission. The dream that began in the garden, scattered through exile and famine, now rests in the sons who will carry it into history. The light of Adam shines through Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and now through the tribes. The circle closes, yet the journey begins anew, as the seeds of redemption lie waiting in Egypt, ready to awaken when the appointed time arrives.